Chapter 395. Silence. Still silence. Whether it was the girl sitting on the edge of the bed or the girl lying on the bed, other than their almost identical faces, they were in sync. The silence was almost unbearable. Teresa sighed inwardly. She had originally thought that she would be able to obtain some information from Xia Yulan, who had just woken up from her heavy injuries, but she did not expect that after Xia Yulan had a few words with Xia Yufang, who had been standing guard by her bedside, she would close her eyes and no longer react to the outside world. And Teresa also saw the communication between the twins. However, Teresa was completely unable to make sense of the Gemini's words. Is it a secret message between them? After thinking about it carefully, Teresa felt that it was more and more possible. But before Teresa could find a suitable way to break through, Xia Yufang, who was sitting on the edge of the bed, suddenly spoke. "Where is the pilot of the White AS? Knight?" Teresa answered subconsciously. "Why are you looking for Knight?" In fact, Teresa was most afraid of Xia Yufang. Xia Yulan and the twins were silent, because this would definitely make it impossible for Teresa to obtain the information she wanted. Now that Xia Yufang could ask, it became Teresa's only breakthrough. "Knight? Then, we must see him in the shortest time possible. Otherwise, we refuse to respond to any inquiries." A light flashed in Xia Yufang's eyes. She seemed to have a reaction to the code name Knight. "In other words, as long as you see Knight, you will tell him everything you know?" Teresa asked rhetorically. "You can think of it that way." Since then, the twins, Xia Yufang and Xia Yulan, once again fell into silence. Although the atmosphere once again returned to the previous oppressive silence, for Teresa, there was progress. Without hesitation, and without trying to communicate with Xia Yufang again, Teresa turned around and left the ward to meet with Richard, who was guarding outside. "Richard, are we still in contact with Avalon?" Teresa pondered for a moment and looked at Richard. "Yes, Captain. We have always been in contact with Avalon." Richard nodded and said in a serious tone. "Yes. Melissa, Wilba, and Xiangliang Zongjie, how are they doing?" Teresa remembered the three people who had been sent to Avalon not long ago to learn how to use the Lambda drive system. She couldn't help but ask. According to the report 12 hours ago, Cruz Wilba has already learned how to use the Lambda drive system, but there is still a long way to go before he can freely use it in actual combat. In addition, Mao Melissa and Sagara Sosuke are also in the next step of the tutorial. I believe that they will soon be able to use the Lambda drive system as skillfully as Cruz Wilba. Teresa couldn't help but nod at Richard's report. Although Ray Minkai had already left the Sons of Dan Nu and took the AIL with him, from the current situation, the Sons of Dan Nu was temporarily shelved due to the lack of combat power. This gap would soon be filled by Melissa and the other two who had learned how to freely use the Lambda drive system in battle. All in all, this transaction was not considered a loss. "Richard, send a request to Avalon. In the name of the captain of Danu's son and the frontline commander of Mithril, I request a friendly visit to Avalon." "Captain, this..." Teresa's sudden announcement made Richard stunned for a moment. "Can't I?" "Richard. No, Captain. I just think this may be a bit early." "Early?" Teresa tilted her head slightly and immediately understood Richard's meaning. "Richard, are you saying that we should only mention the request for a friendly visit after this operation?" "Well, maybe that's the case. But now the situation has changed. The twin sisters requested to see the Knight. Otherwise, we can't get any information about the amalgam from them." Teresa's words silenced Richard for a moment, but he soon felt relieved. After all, this was not a dangerous request. The reason why Richard raised this question was because this request was indeed a bit presumptuous in the current situation. "I understand. I will arrange it now. In addition, Captain, I hope you can arrange for a few more people to accompany us." For the sake of safety, Richard couldn't help but suggest more guards. "Of course." Teresa nodded and smiled slightly. Although the twins have shown a certain degree of obedience, in reality, we can't be at ease with them. Everything may only be known after we arrive at Avalon. Teresa and the others were not the only ones who wanted to know. As the party being requested, Ray Minkai was also somewhat confused. If it weren't for the twins, Xia Yufang and Xia Yulan, who took the initiative to request to see Ray Minkai before they were willing to reveal all information about the amalgam, Ray Minkai probably wouldn't have remembered the twins that he had forgotten about on Danu's son. Xia Yufang, Xia Yulan. Are they the assassin twins you were talking about, Kai? After replying to Teresa's request to board the ship, Euphemia looked at the resume about the twins in her hands. Yes. Ray Minkai nodded. Since the twins wanted to see him, they naturally couldn't avoid Euphemia, the Empress of the Empire. Therefore, Ray Minkai straightforwardly gave all the information about the twins' origins to Euphemia. From the resume, they are similar to Mira, but they are much more distressing than Mira. Euphemia's gaze fell on the twins' extremely similar faces. Just by looking at the two beautiful faces that were almost identical, Euphemia really couldn't imagine that the Gemini were actually cruel assassins that had been carefully groomed. Your Majesty, this is the cruelty of war. Fianna, who stood behind Euphemia, suddenly spoke. Perhaps it was the similarity of their backgrounds, or perhaps it was the resonance of the similar experience of being trained into killing weapons. Fianna, who had always been taciturn, couldn't help but express her thoughts. Fianna, I remember your original experience was similar to theirs. Euphemia looked back at the captain of the guards who protected her. Yes, Your Majesty. Since I was born, I have always been called the elemental body and fought on the battlefield under the command of the military. Fianna's voice was very dull. For her who came back from the dead, the days of being controlled and killing everywhere were already unreachable. Is that so? Euphemia pondered for a moment and then looked at Ray Minkai. Minkai, I wonder if we can win the twins over to our side? Euphemia's words made Ray Minkai slightly stunned. To be honest, Ray Minkai didn't have the idea of winning the twins over to his side at the beginning. It was fate that brought them to where they were today. Otherwise, in the battle at the dock, Xia Yufang would have died under the sword of the crossbow. Your Majesty, I think it might be difficult. Ray Minkai shook his head and spoke his thoughts. In terms of combat power, Xia Yufang and Xia Yulan are nothing more than soldiers and pilots with great combat power. However, in terms of human nature, perhaps it will be very difficult for us to subdue them. Crime? Even without Ray Minkai's explanation, Euphemia already knew that what stood in the way of winning over the twins would be the rules of this world. Maybe not. Ray Minkai didn't care too much about this. After all, under Mithril's command, how could there be a clean mercenary? Even the protagonist, Xiangliang Sosuke, was a young soldier from the chaotic Middle East. In this case, as long as Mithril didn't pursue the matter of the twins could be big or small. The only thing that troubled Ray Minkai was the influence of the 9 dragons on the twins. Whether it was in his memory or now, after the 9 dragons died, the twins' actions were still affected by the 9 dragons. Even if it was an impossible task, the twins would complete the 9 dragons' orders without hesitation. This was a complicated relationship that was difficult to solve from the source. Is it that man? Looking at the troubled expression on Ray Minkai's face, Euphemia's intuition immediately guessed the key point. Yes. Whether that man is still alive or not, he will definitely be a hindrance to Your Majesty's plan. Is that so? Euphemia suddenly smiled and put down the document in her hand. Forget it, Kai. In that case, let's take a step. If it doesn't work, then we'll deal with it according to the rules here. Yes, Your Majesty. 8 hours later, the helicopter carrying Teresa, Kalinin, and the twins, who were guarded by a group of soldiers, carefully landed on the deck of Avalon under the guidance of Avalon. Welcome to Avalon. We meet again. The lovely captain of Dan New's son. The welcoming team led by Royd and Cecil welcomed Teresa. Your Excellency Royd, Miss Cecil. It's nice to see you again. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you two today. Teresa, who walked down from the helicopter, walked to Royd and Cecil and bowed slightly. No, no, no. How can you say that? It's a great thing for us to have such a lovely captain visit Avalon. Okay. Don't just stand here. The captain of night has arranged everything. After Royd casually finished a simple welcoming ceremony, he anxiously invited Teresa and Kalinin. Miss Cecil, where are Melissa and the others? Kalinin, who was following behind, found an opportunity to ask Cecil. Miss Melissa? They're waiting for you inside. Cecil smiled mysteriously and only gave a vague answer. For some reason, Kalinin suddenly felt that this visit was a bit rushed. As for the soldiers following behind them, other than sizing up this unknown floating battleship that had been cruising in the skies above this region of the sea, Xia Yufeng, who was escorting Xia Yulon in a wheelchair forward, followed behind the crowd and moved forward. But then, when the door in front of everyone slowly opened, steel giants, who were 10 meters tall, stood facing each other. They were covered in silver armor and wore red cloaks. They pulled out long swords from their waists and slashed into the air. Bang! Bang! The long swords pierced through the air, and the buzzing sound of metal colliding could be heard. At the same time, the light refracted from the blades was so sharp at this moment that people could not look directly at it and subconsciously felt a trace of fear. Teresa narrowed her eyes. Amidst the light refracted by the blades, she could vaguely see some silhouettes standing at the end of the welcoming formation formed by the steel giants standing opposite each other. Among them, Teresa vaguely recognized the figures of Melissa, Cruz, and Sosuke Sagara. Is this a show of strength? Teresa raised her head and looked at the steel giants standing on both sides of the corridor. Then, she looked at the corridor formed by the steel giants' swords that stretched out from under her feet. Colonel Kalinin, who came back to his senses, glanced at Royd, who still had a smile on his face, and reminded Teresa softly. It's okay, Kalinin. This is a grand welcoming ceremony, right? Your Excellency Royd. Teresa gave Kalinin a reassuring smile, then turned to look at Royd. Yes, Captain Teresa. This is a welcoming ceremony prepared to welcome distinguished guests, and it is also one of the grandest welcoming ceremonies in our empire. Royd had a kind smile on his face as he explained to Teresa in a slow voice. Is that so? Then, this welcoming ceremony is really memorable. Teresa chuckled, then stepped onto the red carpet. She fearlessly walked toward the end of the red carpet in the midst of the scattered sword light above her head. Under the sword light, Teresa's petite and delicate body seemed to be emanating a fearless and tenacious radiance, and it actually caused the sword light that was pouring down to faintly avoid her. Colonel Kalinin sighed secretly, then nodded to Royd and Cecil and waved his hand. Follow. So, under the leadership of Teresa, Kalinin and the others also stepped onto the red carpet paved by the sword light. Very good people. Kai, don't you think so? At the end of the red carpet, Euphemia, who had changed into a royal robe, looked at the petite figure walking on the red carpet fearlessly under the sword light, and couldn't help but exclaim, Yes, Your Majesty. This is the captain of Danu's son, Teresa Testarossa. A strong and smart girl. Standing next to Euphemia was Rei Minkai, who had changed into the Empire's standard military uniform, and he wore a long sword on his waist that symbolized his identity as the captain of the Night Guards. This time, in addition to responding to Teresa's request for a friendly visit, Euphemia, as the Empress of the Britannia Empire, was also conducting a foreign exchange. Chapter 396. At the end of the red carpet was a young girl with beautiful long hair, wearing an imperial robe and a crown on her head. Beside her was the young man that Teresa was familiar with, Rei Minkai. Now, in this solemn formal occasion, Ray Minkai's attire and behavior proved that the identity that he mentioned when he was watching the sea with Teresa not long ago was real and not a meaningless joke. Teresa slowly withdrew her gaze from Ray Minkai and looked at the young girl standing in front of Ray Minkai again. The Empress? Teresa stopped in her tracks but did not move. Instead, she quietly looked at the young girl in the imperial robe. This action made Melissa, Cruz, and Sosuke Xiangliang, who were standing on the right side of the red carpet and watching the welcoming ceremony in silence, sweat involuntarily. Ever since Euphemia agreed to Teresa's request for a visit, the fact that Her Majesty the Empress of the Britannia Empire was on this Avalon had been personally told by Ray Minkai to Melissa and the other two. However, the three of them who were in a daze could not remember that the Britannia Empire existed on the Earth they were on. After all, just by looking at the unprecedented floating battleship of Avalon, they could already confirm that this country was not a small country that changed 3 times in a day, but a powerful country with a strong economy, military, and even control a continent. Teresa's silence made Euphemia smile slightly. "Are you the captain of that submersible ship, Teresa Testarossa? Kai has a high opinion of you." Euphemia's smile was very intimate and friendly. As she spoke, she took a few steps forward and came to the front of Teresa, whom, at this moment, Teresa felt a sense of pressure. Yes. Even if the two of them put aside their respective identities, they were both young girls of similar age. However, on a certain level, it was obvious who was better. Euphemia Le Britannia, 16 years old, 172 centimeters tall. Teresa Testarossa, 16 years old, 158 centimeters tall. In an instant, Teresa was completely defeated. Teresa stared at Euphemia, who was walking in front of her. She realized that she needed to raise her head to see Euphemia's face. At this moment, the two of them had unexpectedly completed their first confrontation in such a way. Unwilling to show weakness, Teresa raised her hand and saluted Euphemia. "I'm Teresa Testarossa, a colonel from the Mithril Western Pacific Squadron. At the same time, he is also the captain of the assault submarine, Dan New's son." With the advantage of height, Euphemia only needed to lower her head slightly to see the petite girl in front of her. She nodded slightly and said, "Greetings, Captain. I am the current Empress of the Britannia Empire, Euphemia Le Britannia. Today, I am very happy to have you here, and I would like to extend my warm welcome to you. Here, in the name of Britannia, I guarantee that Captain Teresa and all the members of Avalon who followed you to this warship will be welcomed by the Empire." "Empress? Is it really Her Majesty the Empress?" Euphemia's public identity immediately caused a commotion among the soldiers standing behind Kalinin. However, under Kalinen's reminder, they calmed down again. However, Kalinin, who stopped the commotion, did not have the calm expression on his face. His gaze went past Teresa, past Euphemia, and landed on Ray Minkai, who was standing behind Euphemia. His gaze even collided with Ray Minkai's in midair. "Knight, you're really good at hiding your strength." Likewise. At this moment, the two of them actually completed a short communication when their gazes met. And all of this, under the tacit understanding of the two of them, they did not mention it again. "Excuse me. I didn't expect Her Majesty the Empress to come in person." After Euphemia revealed her identity, Teresa could no longer hold back and could only salute again. "No need to be so polite. Captain Teresa, this isn't a suitable place to talk. Let's go somewhere else to talk." After Euphemia indicated that Teresa did not need to be so polite, she raised her hand towards the aisle on the right, indicating that her side was ready to receive Teresa and her party. Euphemia brought Teresa and her party away, but Ray Minkai, Kalinin, and the Gemini stayed behind. In addition, the soldiers who came with Teresa were also arranged by Royd to be brought to another cabin to receive the reception from the Empire. Of course, as a high-ranking officer who came with Teresa, Kalinin must immediately return to Teresa's side, but before that, he still had some things to deal with. For example, the Gemini. "You're looking for me?" Ray Minkai looked at the Gemini who was standing and sitting in a wheelchair respectively, and a trace of doubt appeared on his face. At this moment, the soldiers who came with Teresa had already been taken away. On the surface, other than the Gemini, there were only the white-haired Kalinin and Ray Minkai left here. Among the Gemini, if Xia Yufang, who seemed to be fine, wanted to plot against them, now was the time. However, Xia Yufang didn't have any ulterior motives. After looking at Xia Yulan, who was sitting in a wheelchair, she walked 3 meters in front of Ray Minkai and looked at Ray Minkai coldly. "I'm going to kill you." As soon as Xia Yufang opened her mouth, it was a cold and murderous declaration. Ray Minkai raised his eyebrows and looked at Kalinin. Kalinin shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. Immediately afterward, Xia Yufang said again, "Killing you and destroying the white mecha is our mission, and it is also the mission left by the teacher." In Ray Minkai's impression, Xia Yufang didn't seem to have such a long-winded performance. In this regard, Ray Minkai just calmly responded. And then, do you want to kill me with a pistol, or do you want to kill me with an AS? The soft sound of rubber tires pressing on the cold steel plate slowly sounded. Xia Yulan, who was sitting in a wheelchair, came to Xia Yufang's side and looked at Ray Minkai with the same cold eyes. "We can't do it. No matter if it's Yufang or me, we are both unable to complete this mission." Xia Yulan's answer made Ray Minkai a little confused. "Is that so? Then, what are you here for? Do you want me to give the order to kill you? Or give you a chance to kill me?" Xia Yufang and Xia Yulan looked at each other, then looked at Kalinin. "And? Major Kalinin, did they make an agreement with you?" The Gemini's performance was really strange, but Ray Minkai still noticed something from it. Kalinin also knew about the agreement between Teresa and the Gemini, so he also expected this to happen. And, yes, Knight Colonel had made an agreement with them. As long as they see you, they will tell you everything they know about the amalgam. It turned out that this was the reason why Teresa suddenly sent out a request for a friendly visit. Although surprised, Ray Minkai didn't care much. At the same time, it was also thanks to Teresa's actions that Ray Minkai was reminded of the twins that he had almost forgotten about among the pill slaves' children. "Your request, Captain Teresa has already done it. Then, perhaps you should also fulfill your promise. After that, if you have any problems, you can come to me. Whether it's a duel or something else. No. It must be solved now." Ray Minkai's words were immediately rejected by Xia Yufang. From the Gemini's 2 identical and cold faces, it seemed that they had already recognized Ray Minkai. If this matter wasn't solved today, the Gemini wouldn't let it go. "Then, Miss Xia Yufang, what do you want to pass on the information you know to Mithril?" After seeing that Ray Minkai didn't respond, Kalinin took the initiative to speak. Otherwise, it would be a stalemate for a while. However, what happened next left Kalinin dumbfounded. "We want to kill you, but before we kill you, we will become your lackeys. No matter what order you give, we will do it." Xia Yufang's words under that expressionless face stunned Kalinin, and it also made the corner of Ray Minkai's eyes twitch a few times. What the hell is going on? Do you think that someone would be stupid enough to put someone who openly declared that they want to kill him by his side as a lackey? Ray Minkai sneered when he came back to his senses. Although the Gemini's statement was very surprising, not many people would nod in agreement. But Kalinin, who was standing on the side, gradually frowned. After thinking for a while, he looked at Xia Yufang again and stared at her pair of eyes that were like dead water. "Is this 9 Dragons arrangement?" The Gemini didn't deny it, but they didn't confirm it either. Their identical faces were still as stagnant water. 9 dragons. Ray Minkai twitched the corner of his mouth and frowned. Even if that dead man is dead, he still wants to discuss people? No. Kalinin shook his head. Among the 4 people present, except for the silent Gemini, perhaps only Kalinin, an old opponent, was most familiar with Nine Dragons' style. He 9 Dragons is testing you. Knight. What? Testing me? Are you kidding me? Kalinin's words puzzled Ray Minkai. As a man who was killed by his own hands, he actually left such a thorny problem for Ray Minkai after his death. 9 Dragons, what is he trying to do? I don't know why 9 Dragons did this. I'm afraid even you guys don't know. Kalinin shook his head and looked at the Gemini. The Gemini still remained silent, but that was also the answer. Testing me? Ray Minkai coldly laughed. Xia Yufeng and Xia Yulan were picked up by 9 Dragons and trained to be cold and ruthless. In order to complete the mission, they would do anything, even themselves, to complete the mission. At this moment, the dead 9 Dragons seemed to have used them as some kind of bargaining chip to test Ray Minkai. Perhaps any wrong choice would lead to Ray Minkai's death. Countless possibilities kept appearing in Ray Minkai's mind, but all of them were rejected by Ray Minkai without exception. Kalinin maintained a wait-and-see attitude, because this was not something he should interfere with. What he said just now might be the limit of what he could do. After all, if he were in Ray Minkai's position, Kalinin would have a hard time making a choice. But he knew that in the end, he would still choose to kill the Gemini. For someone like Kalinin who came from a spy agency of a certain country, as long as there was a threat to his life, he would have to eliminate it immediately. The Gemini still remained silent. They did not show any signs of fluctuation or uneasiness about the choice that was about to happen. Suddenly, Ray Minkai coldly snorted. 9 Dragons. I didn't think that even in death, you would still try to trick me. Very well. Knight, have you decided? Kalinin looked at Ray Minkai, trying to find an answer from his expression. I've decided. Ray Minkai nodded. Xia Yufeng, Xia Yulan. You want to kill me? Xia Yufeng and Xia Yulan's eyes revealed a trace of killing intent. That was their answer. Very well. Ray Minkai fearlessly faced the Gemini's killing intent. Since you want to kill me, then do as you please. But before that, all of you must carry out my orders to the letter. Yes. The Gemini looked at each other and said in unison, Order? Go find Fianna. Tell her that I told you to find her. Fianna will arrange your next task. Yes. After the Gemini responded, Xia Yufeng took out a disc from her pocket and handed it to Kalinin. This is the information you want. Straightforward and efficient. After Ray Minkai made his choice, the Gemini did not hesitate to change their identities and began to act according to Ray Minkai's orders. Seeing the Gemini being taken away by the soldiers at the exit, Kalinin looked at Ray Minkai with a puzzled expression. Knight, although this information is very important, isn't it a bit reckless to let them stay by your side? Ray Minkai chuckled. This is a test, isn't it? Even if the 9 Dragons died, they wouldn't let people be at ease. But I'm not worried about Xia Yufeng or Xia Yulan, because this is a test in itself. Kalinin did not know. Xia Yufeng and Xia Yulan, the Gemini pair, did not know either. This so-called test did not pose any threat to Ray Minkai from the very beginning. As long as the Gemini showed a trace of abnormality, Fianna would be able to suppress them. After all, no matter how powerful the Gemini were, they were still in the category of humans. Fianna, on the other hand, had already been repaired by Starlight City with many techniques. She was no longer limited by her lifespan and could completely release her true strength. In other words, if the current Fianna was serious, she would inevitably become a terrifying existence like a moving natural disaster. Chapter 397. Under the transparent syringe was a purple potion that was emitting a bit of fluorescent light. Xia Yufeng, who was holding it in her hand, didn't know what was inside. Was it a spiritual medicine that could heal injuries? Or was it a spiritual medicine that could control people? Or was it a poison that could kill people instantly? The red pupils reflected the purple light, but the wrist holding the syringe didn't move for a long time. Xia Yufang didn't seem to dare to bet on what the potion in her hand was. Moreover, before taking the potion from Fianna, Xia Yufang couldn't have imagined that things would turn out like this. In Xia Yufang's view of the world, as long as someone revealed killing intent, Xia Yufang would definitely kill them and eliminate the threat. Now, what was given to her was a syringe containing a mysterious potion. Why? You don't dare to use it? Not far from the Gemini was the blonde woman called Fianna. From the moment she saw the blonde woman, Xia Yufang clearly felt a familiar scent from her. Yes, it was the scent of a cold and ruthless killing machine filled with death. However, Xia Yufang vaguely felt that something was amiss. However, the current situation didn't allow Xia Yufang to continue looking at the potion in her hand in a daze. Not far away, the captain of the Dan slave's son, Teresa, and the girl called Her Majesty by the man were standing there, watching every move. The eyes of the blonde woman in front of him gradually turned cold. Yufang, come. Xia Yulan, who was sitting in a wheelchair, pulled the corner of Xia Yufang's clothes. Xia Yufang lowered her eyes and silently nodded. As a Gemini, whether it was Xia Yufang or Xia Yulan, they could see each other's intentions and thoughts from each other's actions. Thus, the cold syringe pierced Xia Yulan's neck. Clang! The instant the potion in the syringe was pushed into Xia Yulan's body, Fianna, who was standing not far away, suddenly pulled out two long swords and threw them forward. The long swords spun a few times in the air and heavily pierced into the floor in front of the Gemini. I once heard the knights say that you seem to use dual swords. After throwing the two long swords in front of the Gemini, Fianna turned around and walked to the side of the table. She casually picked up the pistol on the table, casually checked it, and threw it at Xia Yufang. Take it. You should be able to use this. Fianna's actions not only confused the Gemini, but also confused Teresa and the others who were standing on the side. Her Majesty Euphemia, what exactly is going on? A duel? Teresa spoke the thoughts of Melissa and the others. Yes and no. Euphemia smiled and said mysteriously, don't worry. This should be Fianna is testing them. Don't worry. There will be no problem. However, gunshots suddenly. Bang. There was no reason, there was no warning, there was even no warning. The pistol that Fianna tossed out tumbled a few times in the air and landed in Xia Yufang's hands. The bullet was loaded in Xia Yufang's instinctive movements, and was fired in the next second. Moreover, the moment the gunshot sounded, Xia Yulan, who was still sitting in the wheelchair and unable to move, suddenly jumped up from the wheelchair and pulled out the two long swords inserted into the floor like lightning. In a few strides, she had already followed closely behind the bullet and rushed in front of Fianna. At this moment, whether it was Xia Yufang's sudden shot or Xia Yulan's brazen attack, they were all so deadly, so perfect. But now, the one standing in front of them was not an ordinary person. The Gemini's tacit understanding and lethal attack might have been a dead end for anyone else. But for Fianna, a woman who had already become a perfect body, it was just a small trick. Humph! Fianna snorted coldly and tilted her head slightly. She had already dodged Xia Yufang's bullet and let the bullet that missed the target weakly blow up a few strands of hair. Then, Fianna raised her right hand and slapped Xia Yulan's right wrist that was waving the sword. Pah! With a soft sound, Xia Yulan's slash that was enough to knock down an adult man was actually broken by Fianna just like that. Moreover, Xia Yulan, who failed in her attack, also lost her center of gravity under Fianna's slap. After staggering a few steps, she fell heavily to the ground. After casually resolving the Gemini's surprise attack, Fianna waved her right hand and said faintly, "Is that all you've got?" It seems that Captain Knight's worries were in vain. Bang! Bang! Another few gunshots sounded. However, Fianna still stood there unscathed. This made Xia Yufang, who launched another surprise attack, stunned on the spot. What the hell is going on? As killing machines trained by 9 dragons, Xia Yufang and Xia Yulan, this pair of twins, not only had superb fighting ability, they also had superb marksmanship skills. In the previous missions, even if the target was 100 meters away, Xia Yufang was very confident that she could kill it in one hit. But now, at this distance of less than 10 meters, she actually made mistakes in her shooting. What the hell is going on? Is that it? Although Xia Yufang's face was still cold, Fianna already saw through Xia Yufang's wavering hidden under that cold face. Suddenly, the wind blew. It was Xia Yulan. Xia Yulan, who staggered and fell to the ground, didn't waver like her sister Xia Yufang. Instead, she decisively waved the sword in her hand and launched a storm-like attack at Fianna. In an instant, the petite Xia Yulan stepped like a whirlwind. Using the powerful centrifugal force brought about by the rotation of her body, she continuously exerted more and more power on the sword and enveloped Fianna. Interesting. Xia Yulan's explosive attack made Fianna's eyes light up. Among them, Fianna's eyes were also filled with data. She continuously analyzed Xia Yulan's every move and summarized all the results in Fianna's mind. This wasn't something strange. Instead, it was a partner that could provide powerful assistance to Fianna in battle, the auxiliary brain that constantly provided Fianna with the surrounding data values. With the help of this auxiliary brain with powerful computing ability, regardless of whether it was Xia Yufang or Xia Yulan's attacks, the auxiliary brain would use its powerful computing ability to warn Fianna 1 second in advance. Therefore, Xia Yufang's exquisite shooting and Xia Yulan's whirlwind attack could be regarded as completely ineffective attacks against Fianna. The sword hummed. Xia Yulan already couldn't remember how many times she spun, kicked, and slashed with her sword. The only thing he knew was that the golden-haired woman in front of him always knew his attack route at the first moment, and at the perfect timing, she easily dodged his attack. Bang! Bang! Xia Yufang, who recovered from the shock, was the same. He calmly locked onto his target. His shooting instincts were no longer as easy as before, when he was able to easily kill his target. Instead, every time he was determined to kill his target, the other party would dodge. There were even a few times where he had almost endangered his sister Xia Yulan's life. Does this woman have the ability to foresee? Xia Yufang's right hand tightly held onto the empty magazine, but she couldn't think of a way to defeat Fianna. What made Xia Yufang even more speechless was that after Fianna discovered that Xia Yufang had already used up the bullets, she didn't forget to reach for the table and throw a few magazines at Xia Yufang while dealing with Xia Yulan's attack. Looking at the magazines that fell from the air, Xia Yufang suddenly felt that long-lost emotion that she had almost forgotten quietly came online. Anger. Yes, it was anger. Fianna was so powerful, but she was constantly toying with her sister. Xia Yufang believed that as long as Fianna wanted to, she could kill the twins in an instant. Is this the end? Fianna raised her hands and easily caught Xia Yulan, who had been forcing Fianna to retreat and then forced her to the side of her sister, Xia Yufang. Let go. Fianna's hands exerted force, and Xia Yulan struggled. The moment she groaned, she no longer had the strength to hold the long sword in her hands and let it fall to the ground. As Ray Minkai expected, after Xia Yulan's weapon was effortlessly seized by Fianna, this competition might have come to an end. Seeing that her sister had fallen into Fianna's hands, Xia Yufang gradually put down the gun in her hand and waited for Fianna's judgment. On the other side, Melissa, Cruz, and Sosuke Xiangliang, who were shocked by Fianna's performance, couldn't help but gasp. How can there be such a powerful woman in this world? She dodged the shots at such a close distance. For ordinary people, this is a miracle that they don't even dare to think about. Cruz madly complained in a low voice. It was clear that Fianna's strength had refreshed Cruz's view of women several times, making Cruz unable to find the words to describe the situation in front of him. "This is the strength of a personal guard, Captain? I'm afraid that even a knight's strength isn't as strong as hers." Melissa's focus wasn't the same as Cruz's. Instead, she let out a sigh with a faint trace of envy. "Dangerous. This woman is very dangerous. If it's not necessary, it's best that we don't come into contact with her." This was Sosuke Xiangliang's evaluation. However, before he finished speaking, he was fiercely hit on the back of his head by Cruz. "Xiangliang, you brat, you're getting carried away. Don't think that you can ignore everyone just because you have Xiaoyao. Do you know that you'll be punished by the heavens like this?" When Cruz discovered that Sosuke Xiangliang was acting up again, he immediately whispered to him in a low voice, making Melissa shake her head. "We lost." Xia Yufang and Xia Yulan looked at each other and took the initiative to admit defeat. Thus, this sudden confrontation came to an end. "We lost. Be obedient. Although I don't know why the knight wants you to stay by his side, if you dare to make a move against the knight, or even his majesty, I, Fianna, will become your enemy." Fianna's warning became the conclusion of this battle. "That, I think she's called Fianna? Your Majesty." Teresa looked at Fianna with flickering eyes. "Yes, that's my personal guard, Captain. Captain Teresa." Euphemia nodded and gave Teresa a brief introduction about Fianna. Then Euphemia said, "That's right. Perhaps it's time for us to get to the point. Captain Teresa, what do you think of the amalgam organization?" At the same time, above the vast and boundless sea, on a certain ship, Mr. O sat in front of a computer with a gloomy face. He looked at the screen that represented various identities, but all of them had the same identity as the executive officers of the amalgam. This was an unprecedented and bold suggestion. Mr. O believed that he would definitely usher in success. Therefore, Mr. O must gather the power of the entire amalgam in his hands to deal with unexpected situations. "Mr. O, aren't you taking a bit of a risk?" Although the legend of the so-called alien spaceship has caused a lot of commotion, the superpower's fleet has just suffered a crushing defeat in that area of the sea. On the screen, a code representing a certain ore was slowly flashing, and from it came words that Mr. O did not want to hear. These words seemed ordinary, but they had a significant impact on Mr. O's future plans. If he didn't eliminate the impact in time, he was afraid that his subsequent plans would be limited. "I agree." Without warning, Leonard, who should have been the first to jump out to oppose him, was the first to stand up and express his support for Mr. O. Leonard also generously handed over the command of his troops that were about to enter the sea to Mr. O for the time being. "Mr. O, I'm very sorry. Due to business, I couldn't make it in time. However, you don't have to worry. Li Fulei will be the commander of that troop. Please take good care of him." Who was Li Fulei? Mr. O naturally knew, but Mr. O did not expect Leonard to be so generous as to temporarily hand over his capable subordinates to him. This change gave Mr. O the illusion that Leonard had surrendered to him. "Is that so? Then I'll accept your offer. Mr. A.G. Your Excellency Reynold, I'll remember your kindness this time." Mr. O, who was currently short on manpower, finally had the courage to challenge again after receiving Leonard's promise. "No, you're welcome, Mr. O. After all, the amalgam is a whole. Without someone, I'm afraid this huge organization can't operate smoothly." Reynolds smiled ingratiatingly. "If it's possible, I think the amalgam needs a leader to command all the forces of the amalgam. Otherwise, I'm afraid the predicament that Mr. O encountered will happen again." Chapter 398. The red wine in the glass flowed slowly. As his wrist swayed, it gradually drew a rotating trajectory along the glass. Under the illumination of the lights, these rotating trajectories were somewhat dazzling and mesmerizing. Mr. O's gaze gradually became mesmerized. Reynolds' sudden and astonishing speech not only shocked the other executives participating in the online meeting, but also shocked Mr. O. Most of the Amalgam's cadres had already obeyed Mr. O's orders through his many years of trickery and robbery. But in fact, this was only done in the dark, or to a certain extent, semi-public operation. It could not be put on the table. Reynolds' astonishing speech about electing an alliance leader to control the entire amalgam for the future actions of the amalgam had completely laid out Mr. O's actions in recent years on the table. Even the fig leaf used to cover up was torn apart by Reynolds' speech. The blood-red wine slid down Mr. O's throat, and his eyes flashed with a fierce light. Mr. A.G. Reynolds, since you're so generous, then I won't hold back. Alliance leader. The supreme position to control all the forces of the amalgam and all the personnel. How could Mr. O say no? Otherwise, Mr. O would not have used all kinds of methods to obtain most of the amalgam's power over a long period of time. Now, Reynolds was so considerate as to give Mr. O the opportunity to completely control the amalgam's power. Mr. O was tempted. Even if there was a trap set by Reynolds in front of him, Mr. O would not back down because of it. This was because, in the past few decades of development, the amalgam had become a super-empire hidden in the shadows of the human world. Its tentacles not only covered many military forces on the surface, but they even spread throughout all walks of life around the world. Whether it was in the economic field, the political field, or the military field, the amalgam's personnel on the surface and in the dark were not completely clear. Even the executives who controlled the amalgam were not completely clear. In this case, to be able to completely control the top position of this huge empire was undoubtedly the most delicious and irresistible supreme throne. I'm tempted. No matter what, human desires are always so simple. Just as Mr. O made up his mind, Miss Q's voice rang out. Ma'am, aren't you supposed to be at the research institute? Why do you have time to come here? Mr. O wasn't surprised by Miss Q's sudden appearance. Instead, he greeted her casually. Yes. At the very least, he wouldn't be so frustrated if he stayed at the research institute. Mr. O, don't forget our deal. You must get your hands on the device in the Mithril headquarters. Miss Q didn't seem to want to walk under the light to meet Mr. A.U. Instead, she chose to hide in the shadows where the light couldn't reach. This also gave Mr. A.U. a bad feeling. Ma'am, the agreement between us is crystal clear. Why do you have to repeat it? In my opinion, this is also an action to realize the exchange between us. After all, even if the strength of Mithril can't compare to our amalgam, we still have to pay a huge price to take it down. Mr. O recounted his explanation and tried to justify his actions at the moment. However, Mr. O wasn't sure how effective this explanation would be. Is that so? Then, leader of the amalgam, do as you say and complete the deal between us. I'm determined to get my hands on the device hidden in the Mithril headquarters. Don't forget. Ma'am, I will fulfill your wish. Mr. O made the same promise from the bottom of his heart as before. As soon as he finished speaking, Mr. O suddenly felt that Miss Q's presence seemed to have disappeared from his surroundings. What an elusive woman! Mr. O sighed in his heart. He put the wine glass in his hand on the table and raised his hand to rub his temples, trying to clear his mind. The device under the Mithril headquarters. What kind of device would that be? How could it make such a mysterious woman like Miss Q have such a persistent idea about it? Mr. O, who was puzzled, finally gave up the idea of continuing to think about this problem and focused his energy on the situation at hand. After a short intermission, the online meeting that began again finally became an opportunity for Mr. O to take control of all the forces of the amalgam. Among the many forces that expressed their willingness to listen to Mr. O's name, including the force led by Leonard, who first proposed that Mr. O be the first amalgam leader. Therefore, The amalgam forces that were wandering around the sea where Mr. O was now began to turn around and began to gather around Mr. O. Although the white marks left by the fleets on the blue sea were small, they had been firmly locked on by the intelligence satellites in orbit above. The next moment, a report with multiple satellite photos was sent to Teresa, Euphemia, and Ray Minkai. Your Majesty, the enemy has begun to move. Teresa handed the intelligence document in her hand to Euphemia. This was a photo taken by a spy satellite from Mithril. From the image in the photo, it seemed that a large fleet was gathering at a certain coordinate near the sea where Avalon was stationed. Although the appearance of the ship did not look like a military ship, for Ray Minkai, Euphemia, and even Teresa, who already had some understanding of the origin of these ships, it was already a ship with a huge hidden force. It seems that the amalgam has reached a certain level of consensus. Captain Teresa, are you ready? Ray Minkai pondered for a moment and looked at Teresa. Although it's a bit rushed, we've done our best. At least in the next battle, the son of the pill slave will definitely join this battle. Teresa nodded. What about the reaction of the other countries? Now Mithril probably knows how terrifying the hidden force of the amalgam is, right? Lei Minkai asked as if he was referring to something. Yes. We've blocked the information here as much as possible. Other than me, Kalinin, and Richard, only Melissa, Sosuke Sagara, and Kurlutz, who boarded the ship, know about the existence of Avalon. The rest of the son of the pill slave crew members so far only think that we're going to a certain island country to discuss the upcoming escort mission. Teresa's words made Ray Minkai frown slightly. As much as possible? Then, how confident is Mithril, no, the son of the pill slave, against this scale of forces? Ray Minkai pointed at the photo in Euphemia's hand. Although it was a satellite photo taken from orbit, as long as a rough calculation estimated the number of ships left on the sea from the traces left on the sea, it could be estimated the size of the forces that the amalgam would put into the battle next. Giant beasts, king of hell, these as's used by the amalgam in active service were bound to be among them. If Avalon and the raging flame demonic sword were not included, these forces would have been too much for the son of the Dan slave. Of course, if it was a mobile warfare strategy, the son of the pill slave wouldn't put these ships in their eyes. But now, because Avalon was still acting as the so-called alien spaceship, this battle had become, in a sense, a positional battle. At that time, in the eyes of the king of hell and the giant beasts, the son of the pill slave, who couldn't move at will, would be a sweet piece of fatty meat. No. Knight. The son of the pill slave can use cruise missiles to weaken the enemy's strength. Therefore, if the size of the opponent's forces remains at this level, the son of the pill slave won't put them in their eyes. Teresa was very confident. As the designer of the son of the pill slave, she knew the extent of her painstaking efforts. Is that so? Although confidence is a good thing, at least before that, we have to make more preparations. Captain Teresa, this is a document, please send it back to the Mithril Operations Headquarters. The disc in Ray Minkai's hand made Teresa slightly stunned. After subconsciously taking the disc from his hand, Teresa looked at Ray Minkai in confusion. This is bait. Captain Teresa. Bait? Yes. Captain Teresa, you should know the organization structure of the amalgam. Beehive Network. With Ray Minkai's reminder, Teresa suddenly understood. With each executive officer at the top, the amalgam, which was constantly expanding from top to bottom, could not be considered a tightly structured organization. Although such a loose structure allowed the amalgam to develop rapidly over the past few decades, it was impossible to transform from a loose organization to a tightly structured organization like Mithril overnight. But, thinking of this, Teresa's mind suddenly flashed. She seemed to have thought of a possibility. Knight, you said there's a ghost inside Mithril? I don't know. But this is bait. Ray Minkai didn't choose to tell Teresa the truth. Mr. Zien Jackson. This was a cadre of the amalgam. At the same time, he was also the secretary of Jerome Boda, the commander of the Mithril Operations Headquarters. Therefore, his true identity was a high-level agent of the amalgam lurking inside Mithril. In the original world line, 9 dragons stretched out their claws toward the son of Dan-Nu, and behind the battle that almost destroyed the son of Dan-Nu, there was the shadow of this high-level agent. If he hadn't bribed a small number of crew members on the son of Dan-Nu, 9 dragons might not have been able to attack the son of Dan-Nu. Now, this high-level agent, the amalgam spy, hadn't really surfaced yet, and hadn't been sent to Kalinin and the others as a gift by Reynold. Ray Minkai felt that it was necessary to use this chess piece to do something. Teresa didn't get any answers from Ray Minkai, but the clever girl captain had already guessed some key points. I understand. I'll arrange it now. Without hesitation, Teresa simply said goodbye. Watching Teresa's figure disappear behind the door, Euphemia, who quietly watched all of this, spoke. Kai, you're really making things difficult for her. Ray Minkai smiled helplessly. Is that so? Maybe that's the case. No one would be happy to find out that there is an enemy spy hidden inside the organization that they have always been proud of, and it might even be the person they trust the most. Oh? So, you already know who the spy is? Euphemia asked. Maybe. Ray Minkai shrugged his shoulders, then added a sentence. If I'm not wrong, the spy who has been lurking for a long time shouldn't be the person Captain Teresa trusts the most, but someone around that lord. These things still need Captain Teresa to deal with herself. We just need to do our own things well. That's true. The information on the CD that Ray Minkai gave to Teresa was quickly uploaded to the operations headquarters in Oceania through Mithril's internal network. As the supreme commander of the operations headquarters, Jerome Boda must pay attention to it, and must also pay attention to the intelligence from the son of Dan-Nu. Especially at this critical moment, any trace of change will affect the next action. As the information file was opened, a set of data, sea charts, and even high-altitude photos were instantly unfolded in front of Jerome Boda. He read very quickly, but as he read, his gaze became more and more solemn. Gradually, a huge invisible pressure from the void pressed down heavily on his shoulders, causing Jerome Boda to be unable to make a decision in the first place. For a long time, Jerome Boda looked at the information in front of him in silence, and his mind was quickly thinking about the action to be taken. But if he mobilized the son of Dan-Nu, it would inevitably affect the next action. Jerome Boda, who was unable to make a decision for a long time, finally made a decision and gathered his most trusted people to discuss the next action to be taken. Thus, Jerome Boda pressed the button that Ray Minkai was waiting for. Jackson, are you there? I'm here, Commander. Please give your orders. As the communication was connected, a capable baritone sounded. Inform the people in charge of the various combat departments that there is an emergency meeting that needs to be held. Jerome Boda said a few words, then was silent for a while. He stretched out his right hand and selectively selected some photos from the intelligence file that he thought were not important and sent them to Jackson's mailbox. These are some photos. Send them to the people in charge of the various combat departments and ask them to think about the actions that the enemy might take before the meeting begins. Understood, Commander. I'll deal with it now. Behind the closed communication was a middle-aged man who looked at the photos in the mailbox in silence. Ocean environment, uninhabited island? It seems that the topic of this emergency meeting should be the next action of the son of Dan-Nu. Then, I need to contact the headquarters. The man looked around. While remaining vigilant of the changes in his surroundings, he secretly saved the photos in the mailbox and prepared to send them to the person who would receive him after the emergency meeting ended. Chapter 399. Complacent. Perhaps this could be used to describe Mr. Ayu's mood at the moment. After many years of operation and greed, Mr. AU might not be able to share this feeling with others. But the confident smile on Mr. AU's face all day long was enough to explain everything. In the past few days, except for the troops that were too far away to arrive for the time being, Mr. AU could be said to have gathered most of the amalgam's forces. Moreover, he also saw Reynolds' sincerity. A force led by Reynolds' right-hand man, Lee Fuel. Although this force did not bring many Ultralisks, they brought the Plan 1058 Helking, which was provided to elite commander-level pilots. The biggest difference between this model of Helking and the old model was that the hair-shaped radiator was transformed into a large metal plate on the back. This approach was to improve the efficiency of heat dissipation, thereby extending the use time of the Lambda drive system. Without a doubt, this elite Helking team led by Lee Fuel was the greatest sincerity Reynolds had shown at the moment. Reynolds seems to be sincere in letting me take the position of the leader. It seems that after this incident, it's time to modify the strategy against Reynolds. While Mr. AU was calculating, an information file with a specially encrypted key was sent to his personal mailbox. After raising his hand to let the attendant standing by the side temporarily leave the room, Mr. AU slowly opened his personal mailbox and opened the information file that surprised him a little. Has the ship started to move? The document in the mailbox showed that the diving ship that had been targeted by the amalgam seemed to have started to move and was lurking near the sea, trying to wait for an opportunity to attack while the amalgam was on the move. What was the intention of this diving ship? Needless to say, he knew what was going on. You want to pick peaches? If it was a few days ago, I would have hesitated. But now, you're digging your own grave. Mr. AU, who had gathered most of the amalgam forces, had the confidence to do so. In the past battles with Mithril, due to the fact that their leadership structure was rather scattered, as well as the fact that they were unprepared, Amalgamate was often at a disadvantage due to their inability to unify their actions. Now that the amalgam had clearly unified its will, Mr. O was looking forward to seeing the power that the amalgam was about to unleash. He was also very eager to see the form of the behemoth that was about to display its supreme power in his hands. It's just a diving ship. Send a special team to deal with this diving ship. After a little thought, Mr. AU quickly made a decision. There was no one else for this special team. It was the elite team led by Lee Fuel that Reynolds sent. The size and quality of the team were just in line with the current situation. However, if the elite team led by Lee Fuel was sent to deal with the son of the Dan slave, they would probably be absent from the next operation. In this way, it would be difficult to explain it to Reynolds. Even though Mr. O had been eyeing Reynolds for a long time, those plans had long disappeared after Reynolds took the initiative to ask Mr. O to be the leader of the Amalgam Alliance. However, in Mr. Au's impression, no matter how Reynolds' current actions were in line with his own ideas, they were still lacking. After all, Reynolds was not on Mr. Au's side. I'll let that kid work hard. It's not too late to make it up to him after this incident is over. There was a difference between close and distant. Mr. AU, who did not think for long, immediately decided to send Lee Fuel to find the son of the Dan slave and let him complete the task of expelling and even destroying the son of the Dan slave. But he did not know that Lee Fuel actually agreed to this task, which would undoubtedly result in him being expelled from the division of the spoils of war. His straightforwardness made Mr. AU feel that it was unreal. But in any case, this small disturbance that could lead to a crack in the amalgam that had just reached a unified intention was gently let go with Lee Fuel's obedience. Splash! When the huge monster splashed up waves, the amalgam troops that had completed the initial assembly were also divided into two waves. One wave was once again launched an attack on the area where the alien spaceship fell, and the other wave was led by Lee Fuel to hunt down the son of the Dan slave who was trying to cause trouble. The scenes of the cargo ships and the huge monsters splashing up waves had been adjusted to a synchronous orbit. The intelligence satellites that were constantly monitoring this area 24 hours a day had locked onto them and forwarded the relevant images back to the son of the Dan slave and Avalon. Night. The enemy has begun to move. The familiar words sounded again. However, at this moment, Teresa was not in a good mood. Because, from the images captured by the intelligence satellites, Ray Minkai's previous move of asking Teresa to send back false information to the operations headquarters had already proved one thing. A matter of life and death for Mithril. In the operations headquarters, there was at least one agent from the Amalgam who had access to the top secrets from time to time. Yes, the enemy has begun to move. Captain Teresa, are you okay on your side? When the expected result appeared, Ray Minkai could not help but sigh. However, the most important thing now was Teresa's condition. Even if Melissa, Cruz, and Sosuke Xiangliang, who were sent here to learn how to use the Lambda drive system, were urgently recalled, the situation facing the son of the Dan slave was still extremely grim. Among the son of the Dan slave, only Cruz could use the Lambda drive system smoothly. Although Melissa and Sosuke Xiangliang had records of being able to activate the Lambda drive system, the level of the two was far less stable than Cruz, and they were still in an unstable state. In this case, the enemies that were about to be attracted by the son of the Dan slave were all equipped with the Lambda drive system, and the worst was at least the King of Hell level. No, Knight. I'm fine. The most terrible time is when the enemy lurking among us kills us without us knowing. But now we already know that there are enemies lurking among us. This is already the best situation at the moment. So, everything has to wait until we win this battle before we have a chance to settle everything. Teresa was indeed a strong girl. The strong and intelligent Teresa immediately grasped the key point and made the most suitable and most appropriate choice at the moment. Yes, Captain Teresa. Please rest assured. I may be able to send some support to you. Please hold on for a while before our reinforcements arrive. Ray Minkai nodded slightly and gave Teresa a promise. Support? Knight, do you have enough people on your side? Teresa was slightly taken aback. Although Ray Minkai's strength was amazing, facing the amalgam that pulled out most of its strength, he should not divide his strength. I have enough people on my side. Don't worry, Captain Teresa. Ray Minkai waved his hand, indicating that it was fine. Even if he did not count Ray Minkai, White Cat Zero, and the new body that had been officially named the Roaring Flame Demon Sword, relying on Fianna and the other members of the Knight Regiment who followed along was enough to deal with most situations. Moreover, in an emergency, as an airship, Avalon could also appear in the form of a firepower fortress, using the 3 electromagnetic cannons hidden under the deck and the 200 series of universal missile launching systems that extended from the middle of the hull to the rear wing to provide firepower support to the front line. Ray Minkai had reason to believe that under the premise that Leonard's fallen angel did not appear in this sea area, Avalon's firepower was enough to crush the entire battlefield. Of course, this situation would only happen when there was no other choice. Ray Minkai did not intend to let Avalon announce its existence to the world so soon. Swoosh! While thinking, the automatic door opened. It was Fianna and Gemini who had changed into a fitting Imperial military uniform. Captain Knight. Fianna bowed to Ray Minkai. In public, as the captain of the Queen's Guards, Fianna was on the same level as Ray Minkai. But in private, Fianna still followed the relationship between superior and subordinate and meticulously carried out the etiquette that subordinates should perform. Fianna, how are their qualifications? Ray Minkai nodded and looked at the two people who stood quietly behind Fianna. They did not have the slightest excessive reaction to Ray Minkai, the person that they declared they must kill. Very good. Whether it is the elder sister Xia Yufang or the younger sister Xia Yulan, their fighting ability, shooting ability, and body piloting skills have all reached or even exceeded the basic requirements of the Red Shoulders team. As soon as Fianna spoke, Ray Minkai was a little surprised. Oh? Reached the basic requirements of the Red Shoulders team? Xia Yufeng, Xia Yulan, your abilities were able to receive such high praise from Fianna? Xia Yufeng and Xia Yulan were unmoved by Ray Minkai's doubt. This should be inevitable. As people from a different world, Gemini would not know what the name of the Red Shoulders team meant to Ray Minkai. That was a super ACE team formed by the sole survivor of hundreds of elite pilots who had fought against each other. From this, it could be seen why Ray Minkai was surprised when he heard Fianna's high praise for Gemini. Captain Knight, please don't misunderstand. This does not mean that Xia Yufeng and Xia Yulan can be compared to the official Red Shoulders team. What I mean is that Xia Yufeng and Xia Yulan's current level can participate in the Red Shoulders team, the real Red Shoulders team selection, and can also obtain the final qualification with a high probability. Fianna already guessed Ray Minkai's thoughts from Ray Minkai's expression. So, Fianna explained again to clarify Ray Minkai's misunderstanding. The qualification to be selected? Ray Minkai, who understood, shook his head slightly. But this is enough to surprise people. So, Fianna, are you confident about the next operation? Fianna's expression became serious. Of course, your subordinate is confident in the following operation. But for them, the knight's confidence is the most important. Yes. In the next operation, Gemini would not act with Ray Minkai and Fianna. Instead, they would be sent by Ray Minkai to support the Dan slave's son. This might be a risk, but Ray Minkai felt it was worth a try. In addition, Gemini's body was not the king of hell, but the mass-produced Lionheart knight that was temporarily modified. Ray Minkai, who controlled the final control key of the mass-produced Lionheart knight, was not worried that Gemini would cause trouble after leaving Avalon. After all, dealing with Gemini was just a matter of pressing a button. Xia Yufeng, Xia Yulan. Ray Minkai, who made the decision, shouted loudly. Gemini took a step forward, past Fianna, and stood 3 meters in front of Ray Minkai. With such a distance, according to Xia Yulan's eruption, it would only take a short second. However, Gemini, who had declared that she wanted to kill Ray Minkai, had a cold expression. She silently waited for Ray Minkai's order, just like how she had declared that she wanted to kill Ray Minkai in the first place. Then, she announced that she wanted to become Ray Minkai's lackey. Are you really lackeys? After a few rays of light flashed through Ray Minkai's eyes, he raised his hand and pointed at Gemini in turn. Xia Yufeng, Xia Yulan. Not long ago you claimed that before killing me, you would become my lackeys. Now you will have your first task as lackeys. Are you really mentally prepared to become my lackeys? Xia Yufeng and Xia Yulan's expressions did not change, but the light in their eyes was extremely cold. Please give the order. Gemini was unmoved and only responded coldly to Ray Minkai's words. Go. Go get your new body, then go support the Dan New's son and expel or eliminate the amalgam troop. Yes. After the order was given, Gemini simply turned around and left, leaving no time for Ray Minkai to continue testing them. Just like the old me. Looking at Gemini's back as they left, Fianna suddenly felt emotional. Thinking of Kiligu? Ray Minkai heard Fianna's sigh and said casually, No. Knight Captain. It's just an emotional outburst. This pair of sisters, except for the feelings between each other, would hardly have any attachment to anything in the outside world. It's simply a living killing machine. Fianna recalled when she had just woken up and conducted various experiments under the command of the military. The only difference was that the Gemini still had each other, while Fianna was alone until she met Qi Li Gu and followed him in the following days. Only then did things change. But, Fianna. They became like this because of that man's appearance. Perhaps this is fate. Ray Minkai raised his right hand and slowly clenched his fist. Now that man is already dead. Then, in the next battle, Gemini's fate perhaps, no, it should be said that it will be changed by me, by us. Just like when you met Killigoo, your fate began to change. Chapter 400. The atmosphere before the battle was solemn. When so many killing weapons created by the most advanced human technology were gathered in this sea area, the aquatic creatures living in this area were gradually driven away from this area of the sea area that they used to live in due to the heavy atmosphere before the storm, as well as the huge sense of oppression. Under the bright and beautiful sun, in the clear sea water, the coral reef that only had a few fish fry left was suddenly shrouded by a huge shadow. At the same time, a heavy pressure also came with the arrival of this huge shadow and pressed on the heads of the remaining aquatics in the coral reef. Phew! Puff! In an instant, the sand on the seabed paved with soft sand had yet to be blown away by the current. The remaining aquatics that remained around the coral reef finally abandoned the sea area that they relied on for their survival and fled deeper into the sea. Boom! The moment this last escape route was launched, a violent explosion blew up the sea area where the coral reef was located and dragged the shadow that shrouded the coral reef into a catastrophe. Boom! 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 Above the sky, streaks of white light continuously descended from the sky and fell into this sea area like a rainstorm, completely covering the coral reef in it. At the same time as the strong energy explosion erupted, it also set off waves of water that were higher than the previous wave. There was a thunderous rumble. Waves of water that were higher than the previous waves. This wave of movement that was louder than the previous wave made Mr. O, who was at the rear, frown slightly. Sir, the vanguard troops are under attack. Mr. O suddenly raised his right hand, indicating that his subordinates could shut up. Even if his subordinates did not say anything, Mr. O could still observe the water column that exploded from the horizon in the distance with his naked eye. The battle was very intense. However, just like the previous battle, they did not find any trace of the enemy at all. TSK. Are all the preparations we made before completely useless? Mr. O secretly clenched his fist. In order not to repeat the same mistake, Mr. O had made many arrangements before the battle began. In order to allow the giant beast to successfully break through to the side of the so-called alien spaceship, Mr. O had deployed almost all of the available helicopters in this area. However, the behemoth at the forefront of the vanguard force was attacked before the helicopter gave any warning. What the hell is going on? The enemy's attack range was actually so far? Pass down the order. While the vanguard forces speed up, let the helicopters expand the search area. The enemy was in the dark while I was in the light. In this helpless situation, Mr. O finally came up with a solution that was not a solution. In the sky, more than a dozen black dots quickly spread out in a fan shape, expanding the search area as quickly as possible. They did their best to explore the situation in front of the vanguard and even the surrounding area to provide intelligence support for the vanguard. The enemy has taken the bait. Unbeknownst to them, when Mr. O decided to expand the search range of the helicopter, many pairs of eyes were also secretly watching the situation. Do it. Fianna, Countess Royd. Euphemia, who sat on the throne, looked at the helicopter on the screen and nodded slightly. Yes, Your Majesty. Fianna raised her hand and lightly tapped her chest. She immediately turned around and left for Neku. Royd, on the other hand, pushed up his glasses and waved his hand to give an order. Missile launchers A1 to B2 on the right flank of Avalon, load with interference fog bombs. Launch in 180 seconds. Target area A002. Then, Royd said again. Missile launchers C1 to D1 on the left flank of Avalon, load with weather camouflage particle system warheads. Launch in 200 seconds. Target airspace above Avalon. Following Royd's order, a series of commands suddenly rang out on the entire bridge of Avalon. Amidst the commands, Euphemia, who sat firmly on the throne, could see from the main screen on the bridge that the missile launchers named by Royd entered a state of readiness for launch one by one, waiting for the end of the countdown. The first wave of missiles would be launched in 180 seconds. These 180 seconds were neither long nor short. Under Euphemia's gaze, the moment the first countdown on the screen reached 0, the command to launch the missiles instantly rang out in the air on the bridge. Interference fog bombs, launchers A1 to B2 launch. The moment the launch button was pressed, the launchers on the left flank of Avalon were instantly shrouded in columns of smoke that rose into the air. The missiles that dragged the columns of smoke even passed through the screen released by the Utopia system at a speed of several Mach, rushing into the sky above the sea where the battle was about to begin. At this moment, the dozens of columns of smoke that rose into the air were unsurprisingly captured by the helicopters that were spreading out to investigate the battlefield. Look, that is. The pilot of a helicopter tried his best, but the moment he finally saw the true face of the column of smoke, he was immediately shocked. Warning! Warning! Enemy! The moment the shrill cry sounded on the channel dedicated to the amalgam, an unexpected noise suddenly swept through the communication channel that the amalgam could use. Whether it was on the ship, or on the helicopter, or even the giant beasts, the pilots of Hell King racked their brains and tried to restore the communication, but it still didn't work. Because the moment the missile that the helicopter pilot witnessed finally drew an arc in the air and rushed into the sky above the sea at lightning speed, an energy wave that humans could not see or perceive instantly swept through the blue sky. What interference! Our communication channel is interfered with. This is EMP? The helicopter pilot, who had rich combat experience, remembered a battle he had encountered when he was fighting on the battlefield in the past. It was a hopeless battle where even the heavens and earth couldn't respond to the cries for help. If it weren't for the pilot's luck being a little better than his other teammates, he probably wouldn't have appeared in this sea area now, watching the missiles that rose into the air and exploded in the sky one after another, wantonly spreading their power, allowing it to fill the sky and abolishing the amalgam's communication network. But this wasn't all. In the eyes of the pilot of the helicopter, the EMP that killed the entire communication network of the amalgam finally erupted with its last trace of power. Another terrifying scene followed closely behind. Missiles again. The missiles that couldn't be seen from where they came from actually rose into the air again, rising straight into the sky. That is, listening to the noise from the headset, the helicopter pilot seemed to have forgotten the situation in front of him, and only the dozen or so pillars of smoke that rose into the sky were left in his eyes. Under his gaze, the dozen or so pillars of smoke rushed into the sky, and the moment they rushed to the high altitude that ordinary humans couldn't see directly with the naked eye, these missiles exploded. Boom! Above the ninth heaven, the moment more than 10 sparks bloomed, the sky ushered in traces of shadows. As soon as these traces of shadows appeared, they gathered together at a speed visible to the naked eye, and constantly stirred the clouds that were brought by them, causing these clouds to burst out with lightning and thunder as they rolled. Rumble! The blue sky that was still sunny a moment ago was now covered with dark clouds and thunder. What the hell is going on? Those missiles can control the weather? Boom! While the helicopter pilot stared blankly at the shocking changes in the sky above his head, a bolt of lightning suddenly burst out from the sky, crossing the void and accurately striking the helicopter. Boom! With a flash of lightning, life and death were already separated. No matter how many questions the pilot had in his mind before this, they were all reduced to nothingness under the lightning that could destroy everything in the world. Storm? How is that possible? Behind him, Mr. O looked up at the dark clouds that were rapidly spreading from the horizon to the top of his head. With a solemn expression, he looked at the lightning and thunder from the clouds in the distance. Vaguely, Mr. O felt that this was not an accident caused by nature, but a shocking change caused by man. However, the moment this thought appeared, it was rejected by Mr. O himself. As the executive officer of Amalgam, as well as the underground king who had mastered the black technology provided by many whispers, Mr. O did not believe that there was a weapon in this world that could control the weather. Otherwise, those mysterious whisperers would have developed it long ago. Go. Let the first reserve team take over. Don't let any more accidents happen to the helicopter. Actually, the most important thing to do now was to let the helicopter retreat. However, before the storm began, all the communication equipment seemed to have malfunctioned and could no longer send out an effective message, causing Mr. O to be unable to grasp the situation in front of him in time. The only thing he could know was the cluster of fire in the sky that had yet to disperse. The enemy behind has taken the bait. As the storm spread, 2 faint lights lit up in the increasingly dark seabed. Vaguely, behind these 2 faint lights, there seemed to be a behemoth lurking in the depths of the sea, waiting for the right moment to strike. State 0. Don't move. This is not your battlefield. On the other side, Ray Minkai's voice came. Why? I haven't moved for so long, can't I come out to take a breather? A disdainful voice sounded. Now is not the time for you to appear. State 0. Ray Minkai seemed to be persuading the white cat State 0 not to appear so soon. TSK. It's just that it's a little bigger. Don't think that I can't kill them. State 0 said disapprovingly. But you're in the water now. The tusked lion State 0 is not suitable for fighting in the water. It turned out that when Lei Minkai once again drove the raging flame demonic sword to attack, the white cat State 0, who was unwilling to fall behind, also secretly came to this sea area. Under the cover of the changes in light caused by the storm, it lurked on the seabed in the form of the long-fanged lion State 0. However, the white cat State 0's movements were quickly discovered by Ray Minkai. Therefore, there was a conversation just now. Moreover, in order to prove that he would not be affected by the surrounding seawater, State 0 suddenly raised his head and a glimmer emerged from the seawater in all directions and quickly gathered in front of the tusked lion State 0. Buzz! In the midst of a low roar, the seawater that originally wrapped around the tusked lion State 0 was gradually stripped away by an invisible force until it was completely isolated by that force, causing the tusked lion State 0's surrounding environment to become empty from seawater. And this is the Lambda drive system? A familiar energy fluctuation. A familiar light. Ray Minkai, who was lurking nearby, was surprised. Hey, Kai. Just watch. This is the power of our Z-core. As long as there is a reference, we can imitate and even evolve the same power. State 0's voice was extremely proud. At the same time, under the ripple-like light that spread outwards, the white tusked lion State 0's body flashed and transformed into a dark green Bangsa tusked lion. Kai. Watch carefully for me. This Lambda drive system can give the Bangsa tusked lion a brand new power. The moment State 0's low roar sounded, another ripple of light emerged. However, this ripple of light appeared at the tail of the Bangsa tusked lion, behind the 2 cannons that had terrible power and terrible recoil. Boom! The muzzle of the cannons flashed, and the seawater that was isolated by the Lambda drive system tumbled. The cannonballs rushed out of the barrel and rushed straight up from the bottom of the sea as the ripple of light bloomed, smashing the giant beast that just appeared in the shooting path. Boom! A water column splashed high into the air, and the giant beast carrying a huge jet engine on its back was blasted into pieces. Under the water, the ripple of light behind the Bangsa tusked lion slowly emitted a glimmer. This seemingly fragile but incomparably hard ripple of light smoothly offset the recoil of the 2 powerful cannons on the back of the Bangsa tusked lion, greatly reducing the burden of the Bangsa tusked lion when firing. Roar! The attack was successful. State 0 could no longer hold back the excitement in his heart. Since it discovered the existence of the Lambda drive system, It had been planning to integrate the Lambda drive system into its own power. The result made the cat happy. The power of the Lambda drive system could offset the heavy burden of the Bangsa tusked lion when firing, and it also gave the Bangsa tusked lion the possibility of increasing its mobility. The more he thought about it, the more proud State Zero became. He no longer paid attention to Ray Minkai's shouts. With a step, a ripple of light formed under his feet, lifting the heavy body of the Bangsa tusked lion into the air. It works. State Zero's cold electronic eyes flashed, and he raised his head slightly again. The light that flashed in the electronic eyes was the cold light that bloomed when the hunter stared at the prey. At this time, the tusked lion State Zero seemed to be eyeing the remaining giant beasts. Chapter 401. Playing around. Those who were familiar with the habits of cats would know that when a cat got a new toy, they would be extremely active and would want to fight with the new toy for 300 rounds. Now, State Zero, who claimed that he had integrated the Lambda drive system, was like this. Although the long-toothed lion could already use the Bangja form, the extremely heavy equipment in the Bangja form had always made State Zero love and hate it. It loved nothing more than the unparalleled lethality of the powerful equipment that was armed to the teeth. It hated the weight of the equipment that exceeded the long-toothed lion's load. The heavy weight made the long-toothed lion, who maintained a certain degree of mobility at all times, extremely uncomfortable. Therefore, in most of the battles, the long-toothed lion had intentionally or unintentionally sealed the Bangja form. Now, when State Zero discovered that the giant beast, which weighed thousands of tons, could move freely, he immediately became interested in the Lambda drive system. Therefore, the elusive white cat, State Zero, secretly thought of the strong crossbow's AI-AL. This also led to the scene of AL brazenly activating the self-destruct program in order to force the white cat to retreat not long ago. Under this torment, State Zero finally got what he wanted and successfully obtained the relevant data and physical model of the Lambda drive system. The cold seawater was blocked by the screen condensed by the Lambda drive system. The long-toothed lion, who stood firmly on the soft seabed, raised its head and looked up coldly. Over there, several black shadows were rushing over from different directions. Judging from the size of the black shadow, it shouldn't be a huge body like a giant beast. Instead, it should be a relatively small Hell King and the helicopter that carried them. Hey! Are they just a few small bugs? Because of the Lambda drive system, the heavy body did not sink into the soft seabed paved with fine sand. This made State Zero once again have a new understanding of the Lambda drive system's special characteristics, and also made State Zero involuntarily feel proud of his decision to obtain the Lambda drive system. On the other side, Ray Minkai had already given up on this operation. As a partner, it was not difficult for Ray Minkai to see through State Zero's thoughts at this moment. This cat that just got a new toy would definitely be eager to play with the new toy. However, as the new toy's target, it was a bit miserable. The soft sea sand was covered by heavy armor. As the iron claws were raised, the missile pods on the Bangsa long-toothed lion opened one after another, revealing the missiles covered by the baffle. Under the guidance of the system, they firmly locked onto the King of Hell, who was moving rapidly towards them under the clouds of the helicopter. Fianna. Is the surrounding interference completed? Ray Minkai did not care about State Zero's show-off. Instead, he opened the communication channel with Fianna. Yes. Electronic communications within a radius of 100 kilometers have been blocked by our interference missiles. Furthermore, after half an hour, or even within 12 hours, the intelligence satellites passing over this area of the sea won't be able to spy on anything in this area. Fianna replied. Okay. I got it. Now, regardless of whether it was electronic communications or high-altitude intelligence reconnaissance, most of the intelligence-gathering methods had been abolished by the missiles launched by Avalon. Therefore, it was time to strike. Roar. The long-toothed lion slapped the seabed with its front paws, and the missiles that had been ready to fire suddenly soared into the air. They passed through the screen formed by the Lambda drive system, and in the next second, they were enveloped by the Lambda drive system's power. They tore through layers of seawater, broke through the surface of the sea, and like a sharp arrow, pierced through the helicopter carrying the Hell King from afar. Boom! Under the dusky sky, the final radiance of the Hell King that had yet to achieve victory stung Mr. Ayu's eyes deeply. That's a missile? In his field of vision, there were still remnants of the radiance that tore through the sea surface. Mr. Ayu slowly put down the binoculars in his hand. Now that communication had been destroyed, the only thing Mr. Ayu could do was to do his best to grasp the situation of the battle from the front. However, the enemy that they had been unable to capture was still shrouded in a layer of impenetrable fog. Mr. Ayu could not figure out who the enemy that had been opposing him was. Should we retreat? The communication was disrupted. Even the sky above the sea suddenly stirred up a storm. Although this storm only covered the entire sea with dark clouds and strong winds at the moment, it was not difficult to see that as time passed, the true horror of this storm would come. However, in a situation where the amalgam had assembled such a large force, if the vanguard had decided to retreat after suffering a few setbacks, it would definitely cause the other executive officers to have doubts. Some of them might even be dissatisfied with Mr. Ayu, the new leader of the alliance. While Mr. Ayu's expression was uncertain, a movement came from the south side of the fleet. "What's the matter?" Mr. Ayu looked back and found that the Hell King team stationed on the south side of the fleet had opened fire without any orders. "What's going on?" Mr. O grabbed the subordinate standing beside him and questioned him loudly. "I don't know." The subordinate, who was equally puzzled also, did not know what had happened. Fortunately, another subordinate appeared in time and saved his life. Report. Sir Mr. Ayu. The Southern Fleet seems to have found the enemy and is now fighting with them. The news brought by the subordinate who appeared in time suddenly shook Mr. Ayu's spirit. Are they finally willing to show their faces? Mr. Ayu was not afraid of danger, but he did not want to be entangled with an invisible enemy when he did not even know the enemy's true identity. Mr. Ayu raised the binoculars again and quickly looked at the south side of the fleet, looking at the Hell King team that was wildly shooting with machine guns in their hand. There? Where? Mr. Ayu narrowed his eyes slightly behind the binoculars, quickly and carefully searching the sea that was covered by the barrage of bullets fired by the Hell King team. Soon, a silver-white figure appeared in the field of vision of the binoculars. That's an AS? The moment Mr. Ayu saw the silver-white figure, he subconsciously categorized it as an AS based on its humanoid characteristic. However, this was only a fleeting impression for a second. The silver-white figure was too fast. It was so fast that Mr. Ayu could only roughly see a silver-white humanoid figure moving around in the barrage of bullets fired by the Hell King team. Quick! Send another AS team as reinforcements. Don't let that damn enemy break through the defense network. Mr. Ayu, who could not see clearly, made a prompt decision and immediately adopted the most suitable strategy at hand. However, in the next moment, Mr. Ayu's movements stopped. That's not right. The enemy definitely has more than one airframe. Mr. O's mind was filled with memories of his previous fiasco. In this case, no matter what hypothesis it was, it all pointed to one result. That was, the enemy would not only have a single-digit number of troops, but they might have a considerable number of airframes. Otherwise, they would not send another airframe to attack the Amalgam's fleet while blocking the Amalgam's vanguard. Thinking of this, Mr. Ayu slammed his fist on the railing in front of him. Bastard! However, no matter how fiercely he cursed, it would be of no use. After discovering that the aliens in his imagination could actually use tactics, Mr. Ayu had to be alert to deal with the next situation that might occur. Now, the vanguard was blocked, and the south side of the fleet was also attacked by the enemy. Then, the next situation that might occur was that there would be new attacks from the other three directions of the fleet. If it's not an EMP, Mr. AU looked at the dark clouds above his head fiercely, and his face was particularly gloomy. Has the movement changed? The one who launched the attack from the south side of the fleet was none other than Rei Minkai, who was piloting the Raging Flame Demon Sword. Subtle streams of light sprinkled down from the back of the Raging Flame Demon Sword, as light as gauze, accompanied the movement of the Raging Flame Demon Sword, and stretched freely in the air. At the same time, it left a hazy glimmer in the air, making the figure of the high-speed, moving Raging Flame Demon Sword become even more blurred in the eyes of others. Warning! Target increased. AS-3 Barbarian. It's the fleet's garrison. In the midst of the frequent explosions of the water column, AL's voice sounded. Only 3 barbarians? The Amalgam's forces are used up just like that? Rei Minkai did not even look at the prompt that AL released on the screen and responded to AL casually. Unable to analyze. But according to the analysis of the vanguard sent by the Amalgam and the size of the garrison forces, the Amalgam may still retain about 10 to 20 AS. Half of them may be the Lords of Hell. Please be careful. AL did not seem to hear the contempt in Rei Minkai's tone. Instead, he provided Rei Minkai with a serious expression on his face. Half of them are the Lords of Hell? The Amalgam really put in a lot of effort. Rei Minkai chuckled. The contempt in his tone was somewhat reduced. After the vanguard was targeted by State Zero, Rei Minkai had already determined that the vanguard would inevitably be destroyed. Therefore, Rei Minkai arrived near the Amalgam's fleet in advance and launched an attack. Warning! Warning! This unit has been locked on. This unit has been locked on. All of a sudden, AL's alarm sounded. Rei Minkai's gaze froze. He subconsciously swept his gaze to the left side of the Lords of Hell, who were madly shooting at the Raging Flame Demon Sword. He discovered a few flashes of light rising from there. Missiles! Rei Minkai pulled his right hand slightly. Buzz! The stream of light behind the Raging Flame Demon Sword dimmed. The 10-meter-tall steel giant suddenly seemed to have lost all momentum and fell toward the sea. Boom! The powerful inertial kinetic energy allowed the Raging Flame Demon Sword to transform into a cannonball even after it lost the propulsion of its light wings. It fiercely blasted the sea that was churning because of the fierce battle. The moment the huge water column exploded by the Raging Flame Demon Sword rose into the air, the missiles fired from the south of the fleet lost their target. They finally crashed into the water column and exploded. Boom! The violent explosion set off by the missiles completely tore the water column into pieces. The water splashed all over the sea and blurred Mr. Ayu's vision. Quick! Alert! Alert! That unit has not been destroyed. Under the sea, the familiar glimmer appeared again. The Raging Flame Demon Sword had already arrived below the Amalgam fleet. Warning! We are now within the enemy's sonar detection range. We may be locked on. What surprised Rei Minkai was that AL's warning at this moment was actually issued through text on the screen. It was not a voice reminder at all. Has AL's intelligence evolved to this extent? A meaningful look appeared in Rei Minkai's eyes. If the warning just now had been issued with a voice, it would have been detected by the sonar device equipped by the fleet. Therefore, after the submarine entered a combat state, everyone kept quiet and used sign language to communicate as much as possible. At this moment, AL's performance perfectly demonstrated this. This thought flashed through Rei Minkai's mind, but it did not leave much of a trace. After all, the more powerful AL's ability was, the more opportunities for Rei Minkai to enhance his combat power. The next second, a line was drawn on the screen. It was a lock-on mark. While Rei Minkai was thinking, AL had already quickly locked on to the position of the missile that posed the most threat to the Raging Flame Demon Sword. Target locked. Please prepare. The moment the lock was completed, Ael's prompt appeared on the screen again. Ray Minkai nodded slightly. With a press of his right index finger, the raging flame demon's sword slowly pulled out the longsword at his waist. The moment the sharp blade was unsheathed, the seawater around the raging flame demon's sword seemed to have been frozen by some kind of force and lost all its vitality. In the next second, the moment the raging flame demon's sword's eyes suddenly lit up, streams of light streaked across the corners of the electronic eyes, extending all the way down along the high superconducting energy lines hidden under the armor. Neck, torso, hands, feet, and in the end, the moment all the streams of light gathered on the back of the raging flame demon's sword, the light wings hidden on the back of the raging flame demon's sword suddenly spread out. Buzz! When the blazing light wings completely spread out, the seawater that had been frozen by the sword blade suddenly boiled. The noise formed by the rolling seawater was unsurprisingly captured by the sonar device of the fleet. However, it was already too late. Before the sonar monitor could issue a warning, the surface of the sea was torn apart. In the blink of an eye, the ship that was provided for the Hell King team and the Barbarian team to stand on was cut in half by a white light from bottom to top. Other than the Hell King team, who reacted in time and relied on their own powerful performance and the defensive ability brought by the Lambda drive system to escape, the ship under their feet and the barbarians who were fiddling with the missiles, ready to kill the raging flame demon's sword the moment it appeared, were all buried in this attack. For a moment, the strong airwaves caused by the explosion of the ship made everyone subconsciously lower their bodies and hide behind cover as much as possible, bitterly waiting for the moment when the terrifying sound waves receded. Chapter 402. The flames that could burn everything jumped on the oil all over the sea, wantonly baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Above the bearing flames, there was billowing smoke that obscured the vision of most people, making them unable to see the situation in the sea of fire clearly. But now, whether standing on the deck or in the cabin, the attention of the people who looked at the sea of fire through the porthole was not on the sea of fire, but on the sea of fire, above the sea of fire, above the billowing smoke. Under the flickering light of the fire, above the billowing thick smoke, Li Yunmu, the pair of dreamy wings of light that looked like a reappearance of the legend, scattering starlight into the mortal world, stretched out wantonly above the burning sea. As the wings of light stretched out, it caused the surrounding air to distort. Especially the sparks that drifted around with the sea breeze, they could not get close to the wings of light at all. The flickering flames dyed the silver-white armor with a layer of blood-red brilliance. Under the silver-white mask, there was a pair of golden pupils that flashed with light from time to time. What was even more noticeable was that the pale golden streamers that flashed through the pupils did not disappear into the depths of the pupils. Instead, they flowed along the energy lines that extended out from the corners of the eyes until they covered the entire body. Especially under the visual impact of the lightning that wandered above the sky, the silver-white body with pale golden streamers flowing up and down the body seemed as terrifying as a mythical demon that had descended to Earth. This was the first time that Mr. Au saw the true face of the enemy so clearly, and it was also the first time that he directly felt the powerful gap between the two sides. Wings of light. This is not an AS at all. Our AS doesn't have such technology at all. Mr. Au repeated meaningless words as he stared blankly at the silver-white body that appeared in the sky without him knowing. Under the dense clouds of lightning, the pair of cold electronic eyes looked down at the fleet below. They also looked at the Hell King team, who relied on their high performance and the help of the Lambda drive system to narrowly avoid the fatal attack just now, as well as who rushed out from the freighter that was not attacked. Target is silent. Confirm the number of new targets. Hell King 5, Barbarian 8. In the cockpit of the fiery demon sword, Ael's voice gradually sounded, reporting the number of enemies they could currently detect. Is this all? Ray Minkai's gaze fell on the cargo ship that was protected by many cargo ships, including the King of Hell. There, on the observation deck of the cargo ship, a middle-aged man in a suit was looking at the raging flame demon sword with an uncertain expression. That face was extremely similar to Qian Shanwu's, who had been captured by Ray Mingkai, had long since exposed his identity. The real Mr. O? AL, looks like we've caught a big fish. Hearing Ray Minkai's words, AL seemed to have noticed something. Under AL's control, the electronic eyes of the fiery demon sword kept zooming in until Mr. Ayu's face was magnified on the screen. Only then did AL respond to Ray Minkai's words. According to the sample data, the outline of the target's face is indeed very similar to Qian Shanwu's data. From this, it can be determined that this man should be one of the executive officers of Amalgam, Mr. Ayu. After a pause, AL continued, "Congratulations, Knight. It seems that our fishing this time was successful." "That's right. Then, let's say hello." As soon as Ray Minkai's words fell, the fiery demon sword slowly raised its right hand holding the long sword and pointed at the middle-aged man in the distance. "Its target is me." When the long sword completely stopped, the cold light refracted by the sharp blade also made Mr. Ayu feel a chill in his heart. He knew. He had been locked on by this unfamiliar body. In the next second, the silver-white body's right hand holding the sword swung to the right. The sword light that had previously split the sea and destroyed the unlucky cargo ship and the barbarian team once again appeared in front of Mr. Ayu's eyes. Moreover, it deeply hurt Mr. Ayu's eyes. Clang! A crisp sound of metal being cut rang out, and a crack appeared on the right side of the fleet that had been sliced by the sword light. The cargo ship in the middle of this crack was split into two in the blink of an eye. Amidst the screams of the crew, the turbulent seawater gradually dragged them into the abyss of eternal damnation. Panic. Amidst the screams of fear, the panicked cries for help, and the continuous command for rescue, it quietly spread out. Mr. Ayu, who witnessed this scene, clenched his fists hard. His eyes that were deeply stung by the scene before him stared at the fiery demon's sword in the sky. At this time, the pair of light wings behind the fiery demon's sword seemed to have become larger, and the light flowing on them became more flamboyant. And under the increasingly flamboyant wings of light, there was a sword light that could easily cut a 10,000-ton cargo ship in half. Ru was once again pointed at by the terrifying sword from afar. "Sir, go." Feeling the murderous intent, the guard immediately picked up the walkie-talkie in his hand and quickly said a few words. He stepped forward and grabbed Mr. Ayu's arm. Da-da-da-da. Before Mr. Ayu could react to the guard's actions, gunshots rang out. It was the barbarians who had just fortunately rushed out of the cargo ships that were gradually sinking into the sea. The barbarian who was lucky enough to escape and held an enlarged version of the AK in his hand did not say anything. He aimed at the fiery demon's sword in the air and fired a barrage of shot. At the same time, the remaining two barbarians with rocket launchers used against AS quickly jumped around the surrounding cargo ships under the cover of their teammates' firepower. They closed the distance between them and the fiery demon's sword as much as possible and raised the rocket launchers in their hands to lock onto the fiery demon's sword. Warning! Warning! I've been locked onto. The barrage fired by the barbarians did not pose any threat to the fiery demon's sword at all. Ray Mingkai did not even have the thought of activating the Lambda drive system. He just activated the radiation shield that the fiery demon's sword originally had, which was enough to deal with the barbarians' barrage. The remaining two rocket launchers were a warning issued by AL according to the original battle point of the AS. Al, it's just two rocket launchers. There's no need to be so nervous. As soon as Ray Mingkai finished speaking, the two rockets fired by the barbarians rushed to the front of the fiery demon's sword under the cover of the barrage. However, the aggressive rockets were still like a barrage of barrage, futilely exploding two clusters of sparks on the radiation shield. How is this possible? The barbarian pilot's expression was incredulous. He had only seen a similar scene when his own king of hell was torturing noobs in hot spots around the world. Back off, trash. At this moment, a mocking voice sounded. A red-painted king of hell with several large metal heatsinks on its back crossed the barbarian team in an instant and came to the ship closest to the fiery demon's sword in a few leaps. Mr. AU. You'd better withdraw quickly. Just leave it to us. Is it Gates? Mr. AU, who was being pulled by the guards and was about to withdraw, frowned when he heard the mocking voice. Yes, Mr. AU. Don't you think the timing of my appearance is just right? The Red King of Hell slammed on the deck of the cargo ship and rushed toward the fiery demon's sword. The man called Gates by Mr. AU showed a fanatical smile on his face. Come on, guest from another planet. Let me see your strength. The wind howled. The wind set off by the long sword in the Red King of Hell's hand split the billowing smoke, and it crashed straight into the radiation shield of the fiery demon's sword like a truck at full speed. Boom! In the instant that the sparks flew, Gates stared fixedly at the Inferno sword's eyes, which were flashing with light. Come on, guest from another planet. Hum! While the blood in Gates' body was boiling, the long sword in the Red King of Hell's hand had a glimmer like a flame rising. This was Gates activating the Lambda drive system. However, in the face of the Red King of Hell that had already used the Lambda drive system, Ray Minkai did not feel worried. Now, in addition to dealing with the attack of the Red King of Hell, he was more looking at a certain direction locked by AL. The location of the target has been determined. Target, begin evacuation. AL's voice sounded again. At the rear of the Amalgam fleet, a helicopter, under the protection of two Kings of Hell, quickly started its engine and slowly rose into the air under the stirring of the propellers. It flew into the distance without looking back. Target, evacuate. Knight, do you want to pursue? AL asked. No. Send the target's coordinates to Fianna. Let her finish the last part. Ray Minkai shook his head and gave up the tempting idea of pursuing Mr. AU. Mr. AU's ending had already been arranged, but he could not usher in the final ending under the watchful eyes of this fleet. Mr. AU could die, but Mr. AU's identity, his name, and even his identity as the underground king of the Amalgam could not be allowed to disappear from the world stage. Therefore, Mr. AU's ending could only be quietly disappeared without anyone knowing. Hey! Where are you looking? Guest from another planet. At this time, a voice that made Ray Minkai feel very uncomfortable came from the communication channel. Without a doubt, the only person who could intervene in the communication channel of the fiery demon's sword at this time was the Red King of Hell in front of him, who was competing with the radiation shield. This voice is somewhat familiar. The voice from the communication channel made Ray Minkai extremely uncomfortable, but at the same time, he felt a trace of familiarity. However, before Ray Minkai could recall who the owner of this voice was, the Red King of Hell flew up and kicked the radiation shield heavily. Of course, the radiation shield's powerful defense could not be broken by the Red King of Hell's heavy kick. What the Red King of Hell, Gates, wanted to do was to use the impact of this kick to quickly distance himself from the fiery demon sword so that he could safely return to the cargo ship below. It should be known that the King of Hell could not fly freely in the air with light wings like the fiery demon sword. Gates still had a very clear understanding of this. TSK. That pair of wings is really in the way. Although Gates was very crazy, he actually had a clear understanding of the strength of his enemy. Red King of Hell. I know who you are. In Ray Minkai's memory, besides 9 dragons, there was only one pilot who piloted the Red King of Hell. That was the crazy pilot who used Xia Yulan's body to provoke Xia Yufang to the point that she went berserk. Then, he took advantage of the situation and killed her in one blow. Gate. I didn't expect it to be you. As the voice in his memory overlapped with the voice he heard before, Ray Minkai gradually determined who the enemy in front of him was. Humph. Forget it. Consider it as for Mallory. I should at least clean up the future amalgam. Immediately after, a scene that shocked Gates happened. The raging flame demon sword, which was supposed to rely on its flying ability to dominate the battlefield, slowly descended from the sky and stood in the middle of the encirclement of Gates' Red Hell King and the other surviving as. Hey! Are you walking right into a trap? Extraterrestrial guessed. A trace of surprise flashed across Gates's face, and then he revealed a crazy smile filled with tyranny. Mr. K, is this Gates? The voice transmitted from the communication device caused Gates' smile to suddenly become sluggish. You can speak our language? Extraterrestrial. Hey. I didn't expect my name to be known by extraterrestrials. That's right. I am Mr. K. The famous Gates. Is that so? Then, please go to hell. The fiery demon's sword that fell into the encirclement raised its right hand and waved out a sword light. 1. The sword light broke through the air and attacked, but it was blocked by another light. It was the screen of the Lambda drive system. Whew. That was close. Gates mumbled to himself. Then, a look of shock appeared on his face. Wait. That's not extraterrestrial technology. That's the light when the Lambda drive system attacks. You. In the cockpit of the Red Hell King, the face that was beyond shocked was so distorted. Gates, who was more familiar with the power of the Lambda drive system than anyone else, finally caught a glimpse of the so-called extraterrestrial truth from the sword light of the fiery demon sword. You're not an extraterrestrial. You're a human. Ray Minkai, who didn't expect Gates to see through his identity, just smiled faintly. Good eyesight. But there's no reward. The fiery demon's sword stepped on the ground and rushed out 10 meters away. Attack! Attack! This guy is not an extraterrestrial. He's a human. As soon as Gates saw the fiery demon's sword move, he immediately screamed. But he was still one step too slow. Because the target of the fiery demon's sword wasn't Gates at all, but the other AS in the encirclement. For example, the barbarian team that luckily escaped the shipwreck, and the King of Hell team. The incomparably sharp blade, under the fiery demon sword's lightning-fast swing, ruthlessly pierced through the barbarian's torso and chopped it into several pieces. At the same time, in the process of swinging the sword towards the barbarian, the fiery demon's sword waved its left arm and shot out the claw hidden inside the forearm armor, interfering with the King of Hell team that hadn't fully reacted yet. This was to prevent them from interfering with the fiery demon sword's elimination of the barbarian team. In less than 30 seconds, it was only enough for Gates and the King of Hell team to fully react. But at this time, the remaining barbarian team had already been killed by the fiery demon sword's long sword, leaving only the cooling liquid flowing on the deck and the gradually burning flames. Chapter 403. After flying at high speed for a while, the helicopter carrying Mr. O finally approached the edge of the dark clouds that covered a large part of the sea. At this time, the pilot of the helicopter began to breathe a sigh of relief. Based on the results displayed on the helicopter's airborne radar, they seemed to have left the battle area. Report. We seem to have left the battle area. After confirming the current situation, the pilot immediately reported the situation to Mr. O. Okay, release, however, before Mr. O could give the next order, the helicopter was torn apart by a violent shock. During the violent shock, Mr. O grabbed onto the seat tightly. Relying on his own strength and the double protection of the seatbelt, Mr. O managed to protect himself from being thrown into the air during the shock. However, while holding onto the seat beside him tightly, Mr. O saw with his own eyes how his subordinates were thrown into the air by the shock. He also saw with his own eyes where the shock that swallowed the helicopter came from. It turned out that the tail of the helicopter had been blown off at some point. The helicopter, which had lost its rear propeller, could not control its attitude and balance at all. Therefore, there was only one ending for Mr. O. After an unknown amount of time, Mr. O woke up amidst the sound of waves crashing against the shore. The moment he regained consciousness, severe pain from all over his body suddenly rushed along Mr. O's nerves and rushed into his brain. It was like a tsunami hitting Mr. O's mind. Ah! Mr. O screamed uncontrollably, but there was nothing he could do to make the excruciating pain go away. The only thing he could do was to howl in pain like a weakling. However, a few minutes after the scream started, Mr. O realized something else. He was not dead. He actually managed to survive the sudden change of the world spinning around him. However, he did not know where he was now. Was he saved by someone? Or was he captured by someone? Was he captured by the submarine? However, it was better than being captured by aliens and used for experiments, right? Suddenly, the corners of Mr. O's mouth twitched self-deprecatingly. "You're awake." Just as Mr. O was laughing at his own situation, a familiar voice sounded. Surprised, Mr. Au opened his eyes with all his might and looked in the direction of the sound. He actually saw a face that shocked him. It was a face covered by an unkempt beard, and more than half of the face was covered by stains. Even so, Mr. O could still tell the true appearance of the face from the pair of eyes and the rough outline of the face. "You," Mr. Au opened his mouth, then suddenly smiled. "So, you didn't die. Qian Shanwu." "That's right." After seeing the face and confirming its owner, Mr. O could not help but let out a sigh of relief. It turned out that the person who saved him was not someone else, but Qian Shanwu, the substitute that he thought had been killed when hunting the diving ship. "Milord, I found you on the beach. What the hell is going on?" Qian Shanwu's attitude was still the same. He maintained his usual humble attitude in front of Mr. O, and he did not have any strange thoughts when he saw Mr. O's current miserable state. Mr. O was certain of this. This was because Qian Shanwu, the substitute, was personally trained by Mr. O a long time ago. Mr. O was certain of his loyalty. "I lost." Mr. O was silent for a moment, then he told his stand-in what had happened to him. "You lost? How could that be? Milord, you're so powerful. How could you lose?" After Mr. O admitted that he had failed, Qian Shanwu suffered an even greater blow than Mr. O. "You lost, so be it. There's nothing to be sad about." Mr. O waved his hand and changed the topic. "Right. Qian Shanwu, how long have you been here? Have you contacted the outside?" Mr. O's question stunned Qian Shanwu slightly, but Qian Shanwu just shook his head. "I don't know how long it's been. I only know that after the battle, I was pushed to this uninhabited island by the sea and have been here until today. Although I've tried to contact the outside world in the past, I've failed. Milord, you're the second human besides me to land on this uninhabited island." "Is that so?" Mr. O wanted to say something, but he was unexpectedly swallowed by an irresistible tiredness. His head tilted and he fell into a deep sleep. Mr. O, who had fainted, did not notice the pair of sharp eyes under the dirty face. After an unknown amount of time, Qian Shanwu, who was quietly watching Mr. O, suddenly heard a cold voice in his ear. "Qian Shanwu. Your answer." Qian Shanwu clenched his hands tightly, then slowly loosened them. Answer? Was it the answer of betrayal? Or was it the answer of swearing allegiance? Perhaps, when the Mithril soldiers sent him to the floating battleship, all the answers had already appeared in front of Qian Shanwu's eyes. However, just like Mr. O's trust in Qian Shanwu also had indescribable feelings and gratitude for the substitute that Mr. O had spent many years to forge. If it weren't for Mr. O's appreciation, Qian Shanwu would probably just be an ordinary social animal in the end. It was just that, on the floating battleship, Qian Shanwu once again saw the young man, Ray Minkai, who was originally just the adjutant of the Mithril Witch. Ray Minkai, who was wearing a military uniform that Qian Shanwu had never seen before and was surrounded by many elite soldiers, captured Qian Shanwu's attention as soon as he opened his mouth. "Dear Mr. Substitute, have you ever considered becoming the real Mr. O one day?" The man, who claimed to be the knight captain of the knight regiment under Her Majesty's command, was so straightforward that Qian Shanwu couldn't refuse. Thus, under Ray Minkai's operation, the helicopter carrying Mr. O was shot down by Fianna, who had been lying in ambush outside. Then, everything happened naturally. Qian Shanwu's right hand unconsciously fumbled in a broken bag next to him. This was found on Mr. O's body after he rescued him. Qian Shanwu knew that this was the bag that Mr. O had always carried with him. In this bag, most of Mr. O's secrets were placed. As long as he took possession of the things in this bag, it meant that he would control most of Mr. O's power. Moreover, if he added his own face and operated it properly, Qian Shanwu was confident that he could control at least 60% of Mr. O's power. His right hand that was fumbling in the broken bag gradually retracted. Then, under Qian Shanwu's unconscious control, his hands touched his face, touching the face that was occupied by the beard. Then, with a sudden force of both hands, he tore off all the beard that occupied the face. Amidst the pain of skin tearing and flesh tearing, Qian Shanwu's will became extremely clear and firm. He had decided. From this moment on, he would no longer be a substitute. He would be the real Mr. O, the executive officer of Amalgam, Mr. O. Amidst the blood dripping from the wound, Qian Shanwu said in a hoarse voice, "Everything is for Her Majesty Euphemia." However, this oath of loyalty was refuted by the cold voice. "No, Qian Shanwu, our loyalty is not to Her Majesty Euphemia, but to Sir Ray Minkai." "Ray Minkai!" Qian Shanwu was stunned, then laughed loudly. "Ha ha 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 ha! I see. I see." Qian Shanwu, who suddenly understood what was going on, pulled out a pistol from his waist and stared angrily at the unconscious Mr. O. "Everything is for the Supreme Sir Ray Minkai." Bang! 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 Under the sound of the gunshot, the ground was gradually dyed red, as well as the broken bag that was later torn open by Qian Shanwu. After taking the things inside, he threw it beside the corpse. From this moment on, the substitute Qian Shanwu was dead. What was left was Mr. O, who was loyal to Ray Minkai. The moment Qian Shanwu, no, the new Mr. O's figure disappeared from the uninhabited island, a terrible energy storm erupted in the depths of the island. Then, in the dazzling light that covered the sky, the uninhabited island where the real Mr. O was buried was erased from the map. "Sir, that person has made his choice." The white light that soared into the sky was as dazzling as the rising sun. It also caused the fleet that was shrouded in dark clouds to notice this change. Under this dazzling white light, the corners of Ray Minkai's mouth curled up slightly. "Is that so? Then, did our Mr. O say anything?" The other side of the communication channel was silent for a moment. Then, Fianna's voice slowly sounded. "Everything is for the Supreme Sir Ray Minkai." Ray Minkai's eyelids twitched. He never thought that Qian Shanwu would shout such a slogan at that moment. "Forget it. I'll let him go this time. Now, it's time for me to finish up the work in front of me." Yes. It was a Hell Monarch team, with Gates piloting the Hell Monarch command model. This was the work that Ray Minkai needed to finish up. As for the other freighters, most of them had already been dealt with when the Raging Flame Demon's sword was hunting the barbarians. Compared to the nimble Hell King team, the large and bloated freighters were like large targets, allowing the Raging Flame Demon's sword to cut them down. In the instant when the white light tore through the sky, only the Hell King team, the freighter under Gates' Hell King team, and the freighter occupied by the Raging Flame Demon's sword were left on the battlefield. In the battlefield surrounded by a sea of fire, the captains and crew of the two freighters abandoned their ships one after another. They tried their best to increase the speed of the lifeboats to the maximum, frantically escaping from between the two freighters that were lucky enough to survive. They were afraid that if they delayed for even a second, they would be buried here. Attack! Under the white light, besides getting rid of all the barbarians and the other freighters, the silent raging flame demon's sword didn't make Gates feel at ease. On the contrary, the moment the white light soared into the sky, an inexplicable sense of irritation tore Gates' emotions apart. It was as if he had lost something important from that moment on. Thus, in order to vent the irritation that drove Gates crazy, he didn't hesitate to give the order to attack. The sound of machine guns, cutting through the air, the whistling sound of blades and swords. In an instant, the raging flame demon's sword was surrounded. Buzz. The whistling sound of bullets, the whistling sound of blades. The swords hadn't even reached the raging flame demon's sword when the light that Gates was extremely familiar with appeared again. TCH. The Lambda Drive System? After I saw through your identity, you're using the Lambda Drive System more and more frequently? Even the cute little kitty is scared? The perverted blonde man looked at the screen that surrounded the raging flame demon's sword and immediately began to attack with word. However, before he could finish his sentence, a gust of wind howled from the sky, forcing Gates' body, which was the King of Hell command type, to retreat. Boom! Under the sound of the wind, a huge water column soared into the sky and a freighter that was broken into two halves amidst the painful groans. What's going on? Gates' instinctive reaction made his plane jump high from the freighter at the critical moment, narrowly avoiding the terrifying sound of the wind. But now the only foothold he had was shattered and quickly sank into the rolling waves. Roar! Immediately after, a huge roar like that of a prehistoric beast broke through the water column and rushed into Gates' ears. Who are you calling a little kitty? The thunderous sound continuously attacked Gates' ears. At the same time, a ferocious face appeared under the splashes of water that filled the sky. Cold golden pupils, a huge steel lion head, sharp and terrifying teeth, and a body that was even bigger than the Hell King. Its appearance immediately attracted most of the attention of the Hell King team that was besieging the raging flame demon sword. Lion? How is this possible? How can there be such a huge lion in this world? Clang! A cold light flashed. The steel lion in the water column rushed to the position of the Hell King team and instantly tore one of the Hell King team to shred. You're late. State 0. It turned out that the steel lion that suddenly appeared was the long-toothed lion that had just killed the Vanguard team. No. You came just in time. Kai. That red guy is yours. The rest of the small fries are mine. Be careful of the Lambda Drive System. Lei Minkai warned. Stepping on the ground with his raging flames devil sword, he turned into a sharp arrow and shot towards the Red Hell King. 1. With the long sword in hand, the raging flame demon's sword in his right hand waved, and with a heavy blow, the Red Hell King team was forced to retreat. How is this possible? The power of the Lambda Drive System is actually unable to stop the power of this body? It's just a big guy that's a little stronger than the Hell King team. How can it have such power? Gates was stunned. He couldn't believe that as the commander of the Amalgam Death Squad, he would be suppressed by the enemy in a single move. Can't believe the current situation? Ray Minkai was well aware of Gates' reaction. Gates, who had always relied on the super high performance of the Hell King team and the Lambda Drive System to oppress noobs, would always act like a drowning dog when encountering a tough bone. Although it was pitiful, although it made people feel carefree, but today it was definitely Gates' end. Die. Gate. On the road to the underworld, pass a message to Mr. AU. I'll take his amalgam. Chapter 404. Looking from the desolate space, there was a huge spot on the blue planet below that was slowly rotating with flashes of lightning flashing from time to time. This was a typhoon that suddenly appeared over the ocean a few hours ago. No one knew how it appeared, nor did they know why it appeared. After the human satellites discovered this spot that seemed to be the incarnation of a storm, they immediately launched an emergency plan. However, this was also the same as what was mentioned above. No matter how outstanding the contributions of meteorological science were in the field of weather research, they could not analyze the source of this storm from the data at hand. It was as if this storm suddenly appeared out of thin air in a place that humans could not see. However, while many weather scientists were worried about this, the eyes that had been staring at the sudden appearance of the stripe for a long time gradually closed. "Sabina, how long has it been?" After raising his hand to turn off the real-time satellite transmission in front of him, Reynolds slowly stood up from his chair. "Yes, it has been 4 hours since the storm appeared." The female assistant who was waiting by the side responded respectfully. 4 hours? It seems that the results are out. Has Fowler sent back any news? Reynolds turned to look at the horizon in the distance. Unlike the previous live broadcast, the seaside where Reynolds was located was peaceful and sunny at the moment, which was completely different from the turbulent stormy sea. "We haven't received any news yet. However, according to the original plan, Lee Fowler should have completed the evacuation." After Sabina pondered the details of the previous plan, she gave an answer that she could think of. "Is that so? However, even if something went wrong with Fowler's ability, there shouldn't be any major problems. What's more, the opponent's target is not here." Reynolds' gaze seemed to cross the ocean in front of him and see through the truth hidden inside the storm that suddenly appeared. Sabina did not respond, because she did not know why Reynolds did this from the beginning. She only needed to know that Reynolds did the right thing. This was Sabina's usual style. Reynolds, who was used to Sabina's unconditional trust, just smiled lightly and said casually, "Sabina, while confirming Fowler's condition, we have to start moving. Otherwise, the treasure left by that master will be taken away by others." "Yes, Sir Reynolds. I'll make the arrangements now." It had been 4 hours since the storm appeared. No matter how intense the battle was, it was likely that it had already reached its end. Then, behind this battle, Reynolds still had something to do. It was the same for his opponent. Time is a race against time. Not long ago, when the white light soared into the sky and illuminated the entire sea area that was covered by darkness, Li Fule, who was leading the elite squad that Reynolds had assigned to him, also noticed the white light that seemed to pierce through the sky. That was a nuclear explosion? Li Fule, who had some understanding of the strongest weapon in human history, pushed up his glasses and looked coldly in the direction of the white light. However, at this moment, Li Fule did not dare to make a judgment. The existence of such weapons was undoubtedly a weapon of mass destruction that maintained the balance of the world. He believed that the other countries would not recklessly use such a weapon of mass destruction. "Then, is it time to evacuate?" Li Fule withdrew his gaze and focused his attention on the churning sea in front of him. According to the data detected by the previous sonar, Li Fule's target this time was probably not far ahead. However, the moment the white light broke through the sky, Li Fule felt that there was no need to carry out this so-called mission anymore. "Sir Reynolds, did you expect things to develop to this point?" With both hands on the railing, Li Fule's eyes showed a faint struggle, but it was immediately drowned out by determination. "Inform everyone. Let's withdraw." The white light on the horizon gradually faded, and Li Fule did not hesitate to issue the order to withdraw. Moreover, after the cargo ship turned and left, Li Fule's gaze once again fell in the direction of the white light. "Goodbye, dear Mr. O," he said. The movement caused by the 10,000-ton cargo ship breaking through the churning sea was clearly captured by the son of Dan's slave lurking in the depths of the sea. "Report. The target has begun to withdraw. Please advise." As soon as she heard the news, Teresa suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. "Captain, should we pursue?" Richard, who was always by Teresa's side, bent down slightly and asked softly. "No. We won't pursue. Son of Dan's slave, starboard rudder 3, rendezvous with Avalon. After Teresa shook her head slightly and made the latest order, she looked up at Richard. Richard, it seems that we won this round. Yes, Captain. Although in the end, the cargo ship saw the opportunity and turned to escape. But from the feedback from Avalon, it is indeed our victory. Richard nodded and showed a rare smile. However, behind this victory, the role played by the son of Dan's slave was only to act as bait to attract the enemy's special forces. The main battlefield still needed Avalon to make a move. In addition, at the same time that the enemy decided to retreat, the 2 Lionheart Knight would probably also return. A slightly complicated light appeared in Richard's eyes. He never thought that Ray Minkai would have such great courage to send a pair of Gemini pilots who claimed to kill him to attack. Was he not afraid that the Gemini, who were raised by the 9 dragons, would betray him? These thoughts kept popping up in Richard's mind, but they were then stifled by Richard. After all, after the Gemini were handed over to Avalon by Mithril and Ray Minkai, they no longer had anything to do with him. Cough. Captain, we may have to prepare a report for the operations headquarters. In addition, it should be time to find that person. After calming himself down, Richard reminded Teresa of the things she had to do after this victory was a free win for the son of Dan's slave. Teresa was stunned, and then her expression became a little gloomy. Yes, it's just that I don't know how to mention this to Uncle. Due to the influence of Ray Minkai's previous so-called intelligence, Teresa and the others already knew that there must be 1 or more spies in the operations headquarters. Although I don't think the general is that kind of person, Captain, perhaps you can choose a more tactful way to remind the general. Richard also had a headache about this matter. No matter which country, when discovering the existence of spies in their own ranks, most would show similar actions. Yes, Teresa responded, but in the end, she didn't say anything. The moment the sharp blade pierced through the Red Hell King's torso, Crazy Gate's life also came to an end. Although this madman was the commander of the Death Squad, he was actually not as powerful as the 9 dragons. In front of the Raging Flame Demon sword, which was basically a fusion of the technology of the 2 worlds, Crazy Gate's Hell King was far less powerful than the 9 dragons' Hell King. Lei Minkai only used the Lambda Drive system of the Raging Flame Demon sword to stab through the Lambda Drive system of the Hell King's Lambda Drive system wall. He killed Mad Gates in front of his despairing eyes. On the other side, whether it was in size, mobility, strength, or even the Lambda Drive system's power, the Long Fong Lion State Zero perfectly crushed the Hell King's team. However, this big cat that was having fun didn't seem to be having enough fun. Even if the Hell King had lost all reaction and only had half of its body left, it would still be subconsciously fiddled with by this huge steel lion's claws. State Zero. Okay. The battle is over. After sheathing the Raging Flame Demon sword, Ray Minkai shook his head slightly and looked at State Zero, who was still fiddling with the remains of the Hell King. What a trash. You can't even fight to your heart's content. After State Zero agreed, it turned around and jumped. After a few ups and downs, it changed from a huge steel lion to a cute little white cat. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared in midair. When it reappeared, it was already in the cockpit of the Raging Flame Demon sword. Let's go back. The finishing work here can be left to the diving ship. After State Zero, the white cat licked its claws, it lowered its head and laid on the handle of the pilot's seat, closing its eyes to rest. Although this battle was over, Ray Minkai knew that the real battle had just begun. Reynold, this deeply hidden man might have already discovered the battle situation here. No. Perhaps he had already discovered some clues from the beginning. Except for the Crazy Gates, Ray Minkai did not find any other Hell King with Reynolds' mark in the battle. Did they run to Teresa's side? Next, the information sent by the son of Dan's slave proved Ray Minkai's speculation. A fleet decisively turned around and retreated before coming into contact with the son of Dan's slave. Such a strange action immediately made Ray Minkai subconsciously think that it was the troops sent by Reynold. Fianna, let Qian Shanwu, no, let our new Mr. Yu see me. A few hours later, above the sea that was still engulfed by the sea of fire, Avalon quietly floated above the son of Dan's slave. At the same time, a helicopter rose from the deck of the son of Dan's slave and flew towards Avalon. Hey! What a pity! We trained for so long, but we didn't have many opportunities to fight. Standing on the deck, Cruz said with some frustration. Originally, he was the first to complete the control training of the Lambda drive system and could kill in the next battle, but he encountered an enemy who could turn around and run away without hesitation. Such an enemy made Cruz feel as if he was a boxer who had used all his strength to blast out a blow, but he had hit soft cotton and was helpless to return without any success. You should be content. We're just spectators in this battle. After Melissa slapped Cruz hard, she raised her head slightly and looked at Avalon above the son of Dan's slave. It's also thanks to our new friend. At least, it's better to be a spectator than to fight on the battlefield. Yes, definitely. At least, we haven't fully mastered the power of the Lambda drive system. Even Cruz's Lambda drive system can't be turned on anytime and anywhere. Not to mention me and Sister Mao's Lambda drive system. Compared to Cruz and Melissa's exclamation, Sosuke Xiangliang was much more direct. Under the guidance of Ray Minkai, although Sosuke Xiangliang's control of the Lambda drive system was much better than in the original work, it was still in a state where it didn't work at all. In this state, it was not a state where he could engage in high-intensity battles. That's true. Sosuke Xiangliang's words made Cruz and Melissa praise in unison. In the end, it's because our new friend is more reliable. Melissa shrugged and watched the helicopter carrying Teresa slowly fly into Neku in Avalon. Thank you for your hard work, Captain Teresa. I heard from the night about what happened. Thanks to you guys attracting some of the enemy's forces, otherwise we wouldn't have won so easily. Euphemia took the lead in concluding the battle as soon as she saw Teresa. No. We, the son of Dan's slave, can only do this much. Your Majesty. Teresa shook her head and modestly denied Euphemia's praise. Her eyes were also looking around for Ray Minkai's figure. We all saw the actions of the son of Dan's slave. Captain Teresa, there's no need to be modest. Teresa's gaze did not escape Euphemia's eyes. Euphemia smiled gently and made an invitation. Captain Teresa, the knight is now arranging something. Why don't we wait there for a while? How about it? It's my pleasure, Your Majesty. Then, where was Ray Minkai, who was supposed to greet Teresa with Euphemia? In a secret communication room in Avalon, Ray Minkai was talking with a translucent figure. It was a holographic projection device connected to the Mithril's secret communication channel. The person using this holographic projection device was Mallory, who was far away on the other side of the ocean. Sir, it seems that your plan has succeeded. Through the light emitted by the holographic projection, Mallory looked into Ray Minkai's eyes. Thanks to your Excellency, my plan has already reached the most crucial stage. At this time, it's time for you to make a move. Mallory. It was rare for Ray Minkai to address Mallory as a form of address used by nobles in the Empire. The appearance of this form of address also made Mallory's expression change slightly. Is that so? Then what can I do? Sir Knight. Cooperate with our new Mr. O to liquidate and control the forces of the former Mr. O. In addition, we must move quickly. Otherwise, I'm afraid that Leonard will be one step ahead. Chapter 405. Deep in the mountains and forests there were few people. However, in this remote mountain forest, there was an unknown research institute hidden in the depths of the forest. And on a dark and windy night, this unknown research institute finally attracted covetous eyes. Target found. 300 meters to the left, 2 people under a tree. 1 person on the mountain slope to the right. 5 people at the central gate. In the dim thicket, there were blurry figures moving. Let's start according to the plan. A cold voice sounded in the communication channel. It was Xia Yufang's voice. After the naval battle, Gemini was sent by Ray Mingkai to assist Qian Shanwu, the new Mr. Au, to seize the legacy left behind by the previous Mr. Au. Now, after collecting most of the legacy of the previous Mr. Au, Gemini and the others finally arrived at the periphery of the research institute hidden in the mountains by the previous Mr. Au. Xia Yulan's hands tightly grasped the long sword hanging at her waist, her eyes always looking in one direction. That was the direction where Qian Shanwu was. According to the original plan, the new Mr. Au would knock on the door of the research institute as Mr. Au, then open a passage for the troops led by Gemini to rush in and seize control of the entire research facility as quickly as possible. Gemini and Qian Shanwu had used this method many times on their way here. Because Qian Shanwu used to play the role of a substitute, most of the amalgam members did not know that there were 2 Mr. Au, so the operation was very smooth. Qian Shanwu sat in the car that was moving up and down the mountain road. He was playing with a lighter with a gorgeous pattern in his hand. He remembered that this was an item that the previous Mr. Au cherished very much in his early years. Although he did not know why Mr. Au, who controlled the entire underground world of Sakura, cherished this thing that looked expensive but was nothing to Mr. Au, it did not prevent him from remembering this lighter in his heart when he was still Qian Shanwu. Until now, after successfully getting rid of the label of a substitute and showing up as the real Mr. Au, he finally found this lighter in the villa where the previous Mr. Au lived all year round. He kept it by his side and played with it from time to time until they arrived at the entrance of the research institute in the mountains. Mr. Au, now I have seized most of your legacy. You can walk on the road to hell with peace of mind. The car stopped in the midst of the sound of gravel being crushed by the tires. Stop. Show your identification. In front of the research institute's gate, the guards on duty shouted loudly and raised the guns in their hands. Stop what you're doing. Mr. Au is in the car. When the guard sitting in the passenger seat saw the guard's action, he immediately opened the door, indicating that he did not mean any harm, and pulled out the name Mr. Au. Sure enough. As soon as they heard Mr. Au's name, the guards who raised their guns to stop the car from moving forward immediately wavered. Mr. Au? After hesitating for a moment, the guards suddenly raised their guns and pointed at the guards. One of them even pointed his gun at the car. They looked agitated and shouted loudly, "Who is it? Come out! Everyone in the car, come out now! Otherwise, I will send all of you to hell! Stop! I don't recognize him either?" As the car door opened, a familiar face to the guards appeared. Mr. Au? How is this possible? Obviously, these guards seem to know something. For example, the previous Mr. Au had been killed. On this point, the guards were instantly shaken when they saw Qian Shanwu's face. Do it. The moment the guards were shaken, Xia Yufang, who was hiding in the woods, made a prompt decision and decisively issued an attack order. Puff! Several soft sounds swept through the pitch-black forest and tore apart the silence. The guards who had pointed their guns at the car fell to the ground in response. Qian Shanwu was not surprised. He just calmly glanced at the figures in jungle camouflage rushing out of the woods next to him and began to deal with the follow-up matters. He then turned around and sat back in the car, waiting for Gemini's next order. Not long after, the guard who sat back in the passenger seat handed a communication headset to Qian Shanwu. Mr. O. We can move on. However, I suggest that we still follow Plan B. Judging from the guard's reaction, this research institute seems to have known that the previous Mr. Au has died. Xia Yufang's voice came from the communication headset, and at the same time, she brought news that made Qian Shanwu's expression freeze. Yes, it had been some time since the battle at sea. No matter how isolated this research institute was from the world, they should have noticed some news by now. What's more, before coming here, although Gemini and Qian Shanwu did not make much noise along the way, it was still possible that some people with ulterior motives might have seen through them. For example, Leonard, who Mithril had paid close attention to. Leonard's actions were fast. When Gemini and Qian Shanwu began to act according to Rei Mingkai's orders, Leonard had already begun to encircle and seize Mr. Ayu's forces. If it were not for Qian Shanwu's face, which was similar to the previous Mr. Ayu's, and some secret communication methods that he had seen during his time as a substitute, Gemini and Qian Shanwu's progress would have been far behind Reynolds. Even so, Leonard's speed was still fast enough. Not only did he seize a part of the former Mr. Ayu's forces, but he also encircled and occupied the forces of other executives who were on the same side as Mr. Ayu. For this reason, Mithril also sent a considerable number of troops to fight with Leonard against the property and sphere of influence of other amalgam executives. Of course, this was also a digression. Right now, the most important thing was to seize the secret research institute in front of them as quickly as possible. Qian Shanwu, who was holding the communication headset, did not hesitate, nor did he think of any effective methods. He was very clear about his current position and what he should do. "I'll leave everything to you, Miss Xia Yufang." After saying that, Qian Shanwu passed the communication headset to the guard. Then, he leaned back against the soft seat and closed his eyes to rest. He did not care about the flames that lit up everywhere in the next instant and the muffled sound of bullets entering the body. "Yulan, let's get started. Be careful not to hurt those researchers. But if they resist, there's no need to hold back." With Xia Yufang's order, Plan B, which focused on a strong attack, was immediately launched. Xia Yulan, who acted as the vanguard, pulled out her two swords and rushed out of the woods. Under the cover of the other team members, she rushed into the research institute and began her waltz of slaughter. The night was quiet, but it was also terrifying. But with the rise of the sun, the chilling coldness quietly left, leaving only traces of smoke floating in the sky. "Good morning, everyone. This is the morning news. First, I'll play an emergency bulletin. In recent days, there have been frequent natural gas explosions all over the country, causing at least hundreds of casualties. Now, the National Emergency Center will now launch an inspection of natural gas systems all over the country and send commissioners to carry out a safety demonstration for the use of natural gas. Please cooperate fully." Natural gas explosion? The people in this country are really good at bullshitting. Watching the news on TV, the white cat's golden pupils flashed a mocking smile. The so-called natural gas explosion was nothing more than the commotion caused by Leonard, Lei Mingkai, and Mithril during this period of time when they were fighting for the inheritance left behind by the previous Mr. Ayu. Although it provoked the National Emergency Center to take action, compared to other countries, especially countries that were in hot areas all year round, the movement here was insignificant and not worth mentioning. This is something that can't be helped. We can't let them announce the existence of some people and say that war is actually only a step away from this peaceful country, right? If that's the case, I'm afraid this country will be in chaos. Accompanied by Rei Mingkai's voice, a trace of aroma that made the white cat restless also drifted into the white cat's nostrils. Awu! That was the smell of steak. The white cat, who couldn't stand the aroma, jumped onto the table and looked fiercely at the plate of steak that Rei Mingkai had just put on the table. State 0. Wait a minute. You haven't cooked it yet. Rei Mingkai, who was getting used to the white cat's increasingly greedy behavior, reminded him without turning his head. The claws of the white cat that were reaching for the steak suddenly paused, and then a trace of struggle flashed in the depths of its golden pupils. But, hateful ah! Roar ah! Suddenly, the white cat gritted its teeth and turned its head away abruptly, no longer looking at the plate of delicious steak. This damned fragment! As soon as the words came out, the white cat was speechless. Recovering the fragments was one of the missions of the white cat and Ray Minkai. But with the recovery of the fragments, the white cat's body became more and more like an ordinary kitten, reacting to meat. Even if this cute kitten went crazy and could turn into a huge steel long-fanged lion to fight on the battlefield, it would still drool at the delicious steak. Fortunately, when the white cat was struggling with the steak, the plate of steak was picked up by a slender hand and placed in front of the white cat. State 0, are you hungry? Why don't you eat first? As the soft voice sounded, the line of defense in the white cat's heart instantly collapsed. Ah woo! The will to resist the steak was instantly defeated, leaving only the instinct to pounce on the steak. Looking at the white cat that was wolfing down the steak, the owner of the slender hand, Euphemia, smiled slightly and then looked back at the kitchen. Kai, can I let State 0 eat first? Let it eat first. Ray Minkai would not refuse Euphemia's request most of the time. Immediately after, Euphemia tugged at the dress that she had just changed into, and walked to the kitchen door with light footstep. She then looked at Lei Minkai, who was busy inside. Kai, do you think this dress is suitable for me? After flipping the steak in the pot, Ray Minkai heard the voice and looked over. He was stunned for a moment, then showed an appreciative smile. It suits you very well. UFFI. Now, the dress that Euphemia was wearing was the school uniform of Array Dai High School. This was from the communication between Euphemia and Mira. When she learned that Mira had studied in Array Dai High School for a period of time, and that there was another whisperer in this high school, Euphemia's curiosity was aroused. Therefore, after discussing with Ray Minkai, Euphemia entered Array Dai High School as a transfer student for a period of time, just like Myra's enrollment. Of course, for Euphemia, the results of her studies were not important. What was important was that her purpose was to go for Chidori. She wanted to see the differences and similarities between the Whisperers. For this, Ray Minkai could only remain silent. Because, just looking at Chidori's photos, one would probably have beautiful fantasies about Chidori. For example, an amiable, elegant young lady and so on. But once they met, these fantasies would probably collapse. Kurlutz was one of the examples. Euphemia, who didn't know about this, was a little excited. While Amalgam and Mithril were busy fighting for the legacy left by the previous Mr. AU and subconsciously avoided conflict, Euphemia finally had the opportunity to see the Earth that was different from her own world. Okay. Lunch is ready. UFFI, it's time to eat. Ray Minkai flipped his right hand and the steak in the pot was fresh out of the oven. However, the lunch time between the two didn't last long before it was interrupted by a hurried ringtone. It was an emergency communication from Gemini. Ray Minkai and Euphemia looked at each other and picked up the communication. It's me. What's the situation? Sir Knight Chief. The Institute is under our control. However, we found something in the Institute's database. Xia Yufeng's voice didn't fluctuate, but what she said attracted Ray Minkai's attention. Database? What did you find? Ray Minkai frowned and asked. Yes. It's some residual data about the design of the airframe. Judging from the situation of the database had been destroyed before we took control of the Institute. Now, the database that we have found is the result of asking the technicians stationed at the Research Institute to repair it. Airframe data. Ray Minkai was silent for a moment, then said, Inform Royd and ask him to send someone over. Yes. Understood. How's our Mr. O doing? No abnormalities. Now, he is assisting us in calculating and gradually strengthening control of the Institute. That's good. Restore the deleted data as much as possible. Perhaps there is something we are looking for. Understood. Chapter 406. On the screen, there was a constant flow of data deciphered by some kind of calculation formula. Everyone sitting in front of the screen couldn't help but pay attention to the changes on the screen. In this situation where they were more and more focused, they didn't notice the change in time. It was only when the data on the screen showed the new changes that everyone woke up from their focused state. Did it work? Royd, who was sitting on the chair, was the first to jump up and ask loudly. Now, the deciphering work they were doing was from the encrypted files extracted from the remnants of the data found in the Secret Research Institute's database. Although the source of these encrypted files were severely damaged, after Royd and Myra's joint efforts to restore them, some of the encrypted files were miraculously restored. Now, the data that Royd, Myra, and the others were trying to decipher came from the restored encrypted files. I don't know, but it seems like it worked. Myra's hands quickly tapped on the keyboard. Now, Royd, Myra, and the others were using the deciphering program. A large part of the deciphering program was written by Myra based on the needs of the site. Although it seemed a little rushed and unreliable, in fact, the deciphering program that Myra wrote on the spot was surprisingly easy to use. Let me see. Oh, I'm afraid it'll take some time. Royd glanced at Gemini, who had been guarding the door since the beginning of the restoration work, then turned back to look at the screen. He saw that as Myra typed on the keyboard, the progress bar displayed as a deciphering progress bar was already more than halfway through. Maybe we've encountered some problems. After all, these encrypted files were salvaged from the garbage dump. How much good data we can get back is all unknown. Myra stared at the screen without blinking. She carefully paid attention to every stream of data that flowed through the screen, afraid that she would miss out on the key data hidden in the stream of data. Then, I'll leave it to you, Miss Myra. Royd nodded and very quickly handed the deciphering job to Myra. Leave it to me. Royd, why don't you go take a look at the things in Warehouse A2? I'm a little concerned about that place. Myra responded without raising her head. She then left the task of checking Warehouse A2 to Royd. Warehouse A2? Is it that thing? Royd thought for a while, and he finally recalled the memories of Warehouse A2. This was an unexpected surprise that Qian Shanwu, with the help of the Gemini, found in Warehouse A2, which should not have stored any goods, after seizing the Research Institute deep in the mountains. Yes, that's right. Although I didn't take a closer look at it, from the testimonies of the researchers, it doesn't seem to belong here. As she spoke, Myra stopped what she was doing and turned to look at Royd. She nodded solemnly. Really? Well, I'll go and have a look. If it really doesn't belong here, I'm afraid I'll have to let the knight know immediately. Royd shook his head and waved at Myra and the other technicians. He then turned around and walked to the Gemini who was guarding the door. He rubbed his hands and tried his best to show a kind smile. That. I wonder which one of you is free to take me to Warehouse A2? Royd already knew about the existence of the Gemini. However, no matter who it was, the Gemini was cold and made Royd suffer a lot. If not for the fact that he was unfamiliar with this place, Royd would not have taken the initiative to provoke the twins who looked exactly the same, but were as cold as ice mountains. Yulon, why don't you take Dr. Royd with you? Leave it to me. In the end, under Royd's awkward smile, Xia Yufeng slowly opened her mouth. Follow me, Dr. Royd. Xia Yulon nodded slightly. She did not care whether Royd would follow her or not and directly walked out of the door. Hey, wait for me. Seeing this, Royd hurriedly followed him. If he had been any slower, he was afraid that Xia Yulon would have left him behind. After chasing for a while, Royd finally arrived at the mysterious Warehouse A2 under Xia Yulon's lead. The thing you're looking for is here. After Xia Yulon gave a simple reminder, she opened the door to the warehouse. Rumble under the driving of the electric motor, The steel door that completely sealed warehouse A2 slowly opened with a rumbling sound. As the light from the gap in the door became brighter and brighter, Royd, who was standing outside, could gradually see the interior of warehouse A2 clearly. There were all kinds of type zeros, and even the ASs inside the warehouse. Moreover, the moment the door was completely opened, the moment the sunlight on the warehouse's ceiling was released, Royd's eyes suddenly widened. The expression on his face gradually became incredulous. How could this kind of thing appear here? The shocked expression did not stay on Royd's face for long. Royd, who boasted that his nerves had extraordinary endurance, recovered from the short moment of shock. The first thing he did was to take out the communication device from his pocket and quickly and swiftly sent an emergency message to Avalon. Avalon, I have an unexpected discovery here. I need the night captain to come here and take a look. There's a transfer student in our school? What's going on? Early in the morning, there was a loud scream in the classroom of Nobundai High School's Year 2 Class 4. No one would have thought that after Sosuke Sajiyoshi, Lei Minkai, and Myra's appearances, this seemingly ordinary school would once again welcome a new transfer student. Although, other than Sosuke Xiangliang, who often came to class, Rei Minkai and Mira only had the names of foreign teachers and transfer students hanging above their heads. The other students' memories of the two of them were only so. As usual, Chidori, who had arrived at the school under Sagayoshi Sosuke's tailing protection, was caught by his good friend Tokapan Kyoko before he could put down his school bag. He repeatedly complained about the news that shocked all the students in Class 4 of the second year. A transfer student? What's the big deal? Is there going to be another problematic student like Sosuke Xiangliang? Chidori, who was subconsciously complaining about the shock shown by Tokapan Kyoko and the other Year 2 Class 4 students, suddenly froze. Then, he stiffly turned his head and looked at Sosuke Xiangliang, who was standing behind him with a blank face. Is there a problem with me? Student Chidori. Sosuke Xiangliang, who did not understand Chidori's actions at all, was rather puzzled. However, no one would have thought that the scene that Chidori was thinking of at this moment was an extremely international blockbuster battle scene. Ever since the kidnapping incident, Chidori had known Sosuke Xiangliang's true identity, as well as the true identities of Rei Minkai and Mira, the identity that Mithril had to declare in front of Chidori. Therefore, after understanding that these three people were not ordinary people, but big shots who often jumped back and forth on the edge of life and death, Chidori inadvertently heard the word transfer student, and immediately associated this so-called transfer student with a big shot on Sosuke Xiangliang's side. Student Xiangliang. Come here for a moment. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that his hypothesis was correct. He threw the book on his seat and forcefully dragged Sosuke Xiangliang out of the classroom, leaving behind Tokapan Kyoko, who only had time to take a photo of their back. Bang! The small hand that should have been soft slapped the wall fiercely, and it made a sound that made Sosuke Xiangliang's heart stop beating. Listen! Sosuke Xiangliang. Tell me everything you know. What's going on with that so-called transfer student? Don't say you don't know. Chidori's gaze was extremely fierce, as if as long as Sosuke Xiangliang dared to lie, he would give him a good look. Sosuke Xiangliang subconsciously swallowed his saliva, but his expression was one of hesitation. If he wanted to say that he knew what was going on with the so-called transfer student, he could be considered one of the insiders. However, before he came to school, he received an emergency communication from the son of the Dan slave. Even though it had already been more than an hour since he received the emergency communication. However, Sosuke Xiangliang still heard Richard's unsmiling and oppressive roar from the vice-captain. Sergeant Sosuke Xiangliang. You better listen to me. From now on, your mission is no longer as simple as protecting Chidori, but to become one of the members who protect the Honorable Empress. Yes. Understood. Although he was somewhat puzzled, Sosuke Xiangliang still instinctively responded at that time. Little did he know that this had caused another disaster. It was a disaster that was severely criticized by Richard, the vice-captain. Sosuke Xiangliang could no longer remember Richard's words when he reprimanded him. However, he still remembered the bone-chilling cold brought by the cold sweat on his back when he was reprimanded by Richard. No. I don't know what's going on. In the end, faced with the choice of being reprimanded by Richard or being taught a lesson by Chidori, Sosuke Xiangliang decisively chose the latter. This was because, to Sosuke Xiangliang, there was a huge difference in status between superior and inferior. It was enough to cause Sosuke Xiangliang to fall into a situation of eternal damnation. No. Dao. Chidori was not a fool. On the contrary, she was very smart and even very sensitive. When Sosuke Xiangliang fell into a dilemma, Chidori could already tell that Sosuke Xiangliang did know something, but he chose to hide it because of something. Without hesitation, Qian Yao wanted to grab Xiangliang Sosuke's collar. He didn't know where he had pulled out a paper fan, but just as he was about to slap the paper fan on Xiangliang Sosuke's face, he stopped. Sorry. Student Sosuke Xiangliang. I was too excited. Suddenly realizing that her actions seemed to be out of line, Chidori slowly let go of Sosuke Xiangliang's collar. After softly apologizing, she prepared to turn around and leave. However, just as Chidori was about to turn around and leave, she discovered that a man and a woman were standing not far behind her. The man was Rei Minkai, who had not come to school for a while. As for the woman, she was a young girl wearing a high school uniform. She had a head of beautiful pink hair, an elegant bearing, and a dignified appearance. Long time no see. Student Chidori. I didn't expect you to be so energetic. Rei Minkai took the lead to greet Chidori, then looked at Sosuke Xiangliang. Student Xiangliang, can I trouble you? I might need some space here. Sosuke Xiangliang looked at Rei Minkai, then looked at the pink-haired girl standing beside him, and slowly nodded. As the representative of the Mithril High School, Sosuke Xiangliang had to cooperate with Rei Minkai and the others. Thus, after accepting Rei Minkai's request, Sosuke Xiangliang walked to the side and silently checked for Rei Minkai and the others. Good day. Student Chidori. I am Euphemia Britannia. From today onwards, I will be a member of Year 2 Class 4 and will be studying in this school for a period of time. I hope that during this period of time, I will be able to form a deep friendship with you. Euphemia took 2 steps forward, stood in front of Chidori with a smile on her face, and softly introduced herself. You, obviously. Although Euphemia was currently wearing an ordinary high school's female school uniform, in reality, Chidori was still keenly aware of the difference between Euphemia and ordinary people. Her elegant demeanor, dignified words and deeds, and inadvertently revealed a majesty that was above all living beings. What is the background of this? Mercenary? General? Or princess? Thoughts flashed through Chidori's mind, but in the end she still pulled the corner of her mouth, allowing herself to respond to Euphemia's goodwill as politely as possible. Hello. I am Chidori. I am also a member of Year 2 Class 4. You're the transfer student? I didn't expect to meet you here so coincidentally. Chidori was currently located in a remote area of the teaching building. If it weren't for the fact that he wanted to interrogate Sosuke Xiangliang, Chidori probably wouldn't have appeared here. Yes. Perhaps it was a coincidence. However, I came here specifically to find you. Student Chidori. Euphemia smiled slightly, and actually went straight to the point to express her intentions. Me? You came to find me? Chidori was stunned for a moment, then subconsciously waved the paper fan in her hand and laughed. Ah, you really know how to joke. I'm so ordinary, not beautiful, and a girl with a bad personality. Why would anyone come looking for me? Moreover, you, Euphemia, can tell at a glance that you're a rich young lady, so you won't have any interactions with me. Chidori, who repeatedly excused herself, never would have thought that Euphemia's next sentence would cause her to be stunned. No. I did come here specifically to find you. Chidori wants to be a classmate. No, or rather, we can change the name. Esteemed Whisper, I wonder if you have time to talk to me? Chapter 407. Elegant and dignified, treating people like a spring breeze. This was the greatest feeling the second grade class 4 had for the new transfer student. Especially when this transfer student had a beautiful face that was enough to make people fall head over heels. Most of the students in the second grade class 4 immediately had a good impression of this beautiful and unfamiliar transfer student. Moreover, in the eyes of some girls who were burning with gossip, the white cat in the arms of the transfer student looked familiar. Thus, under their inquiries, a piece of gossip that instantly spread throughout the entire Array Generation High School was born. Kacha! Among the few people standing in the corner of the classroom, Tokapan Kyoko habitually took a few photos of her beloved photos and didn't forget to ridicule them. The transfer students are really popular. Beside him, Chidori's face was full of helplessness as she weakly responded. Probably. Right now, Chidori didn't want to care about the topic of transfer students. She only knew that this elegant and generous transfer student, who brought a sense of pressure to others with his every move, was coming for her. This was a transfer student who had just transferred over. It was similar to a transfer student who had a heaven and earth difference in treatment, but it was also different. How? Student Chidori. Do you have any questions? Sensing Chidori's gaze, as if she was looking at a husky who loved to tear down the house, Xiang Liang Soji was somewhat baffled. Heh! You knew the purpose of this transfer student from the beginning? Chidori felt as if her worldview over the years was about to collapse. Probably. Although the order I received was not detailed, I could guess some of it. Don't worry. No one will do anything bad to you. Xiang Liang Soji was just about to call her Euphemia, but he immediately changed his words. For the students of the Array Generation High School, it was better not to know Euphemia's true identity. After all, the fact that the dignified empress of a country would actually come to this unremarkable and ordinary school was something that was enough to shock their worldview. Well, forget it. Seeing that more and more people were surrounding Euphemia, Qianyao, who felt that something was wrong, wanted to step forward and use her unparalleled strength and courage to separate the people in half. She slammed the table and glared at the surrounding students who were burning with gossip. I say, you guys should know when to stop. Today is Euphemia's first day at our school. Aren't you afraid of scaring him if you surround him like this? What's more, if you continue to crowd around like this, you might attract the teacher's attention. At that time, something unexpected might happen. After shouting loudly to stop everyone, Qianyao wanted to turn around and look at Euphemia, who was still at ease in the face of everyone's questions. Euphemia, I'm sorry. I think you must be tired, right? Why don't I show you around our school? Hearing this, Euphemia looked left and right, then slowly nodded. In that case, I'll leave it to Qianyao. So, in the midst of everyone's regretful voice, Euphemia, who picked up the white cat 0, stepped on a very rhythmic pace and followed behind Chidori, leaving the classroom. The back view of Euphemia and Qianyao leaving together was captured by Tokapan Kyoko. The battle between the goddess of Year 2 Class 4 and the new Empress is really something to look forward to. What Tokapan Kyoko did not expect was that her unintentional ridicule actually received Sagara Sosuke's approval. Yes, maybe that's the case. However, I think Qianyao is not as good as His Majesty. His Majesty? Tokapan Kyoko blinked, as if she had heard something incredible. No, nothing. You heard wrong. Sagara Sosuke, who realized that he had a slip of the tongue, quickly stepped forward and followed. leaving Tokupan Kyoko with a face full of doubts. What the hell is going on? In the office, Kagurazaka Eri was also under a lot of pressure. Because, similar to Chinyao, Nobundai High School welcomed a new transfer student as well as a new teacher, an ice beauty with bright blonde hair. Her name was Fianna. From today onwards, she would work in this school as a physical education teacher. Whether it was due to her natural female intuition or because of Fianna's almost overwhelming appearance, the moment Kagurazaka saw Fianna, she almost subconsciously went into a state of alert. And this point became even more obvious when she saw that Rei Minkai, who had disappeared for a long time, suddenly returned to school to work, and the new blonde teacher seemed to have some unspeakable secret. It was so obvious that even her own junior, Taira Takako, could see it clearly. Fianna-sensei, you're saying that you can start class today? As the homeroom teacher, Kagurazaka Eri asked very responsibly. Yes. I'm ready, Kagurazaka-sensei. Fianna very straightforwardly answered Kagurazaka Eri's question. Her every action made Kagurazaka Eri feel that the blonde beauty in front of her didn't seem to be a physical education teacher in the ordinary sense, but more like one of those soldiers who appeared on the news. How could it be? Maybe I'm thinking too much. After secretly suppressing her own unreliable thoughts, Eri Kagurazaka tried her best to maintain the attitude of a senpai and nodded at Fianna. Good. I'll leave the rest of the class to you. Fianna-sensei. Yes, leave it to me. Taira Takako, who had been watching for a long time, quietly moved to Kagurazaka Eri's side and whispered, Senpai, do you think there will be any problems? This new Fianna-sensei seems to give me a similar feeling to the problematic student in your class. When mentioning the problematic student in her class, Kagurazaka Eri suddenly sighed and shook her head. Maybe. But at least, this Fianna-sensei doesn't look like Xiang Liang-san who messes around. After all, they're all adults. Kagurazaka Eri and Taira Takako's guesses about Fianna probably wouldn't have any answers for a while. The only thing they knew was that when Euphemia and Fianna entered this ordinary high school, Nojime High School would usher in an extremely lively period of time. Someone sitting in the conference room also thought so. I really didn't expect that our principal would coincidentally fall sick and need to be hospitalized. This is really regrettable, right? Rei Minkai-sensei. Lin Shueidun, the current president of the Student Council of Meidai High School, opened his fan and subtly looked at Lei Minkai, who was sitting opposite him, under the cover of the fan. That's really regrettable. To be honest, if I didn't just come back from a business trip abroad, I would definitely be the first to rush to the hospital to visit the principal. Rei Minkai slightly shook his head and showed a trace of regret on his face. But Rei Minkai, who was talking about regret, knew the inside story of the principal's illness. As one of Mallory's good friends, when Euphemia was going to enter Array High School as a transfer student for a period of time, not only did the principal quickly handle Euphemia and Fianna's enrollment and employment process, but after everything was settled, he immediately hid in the hospital with the excuse of feeling unwell and no longer cared about the affairs of Array High School. Of course, in this almost escape-like situation, Nojime High School's affairs were taken over by the professional team sent by Mallory. These changes naturally couldn't escape Lin Shueidun's eyes. Yes, if the principal didn't refuse to visit, I'm afraid I could also tell you about the principal's current situation. As he spoke, Lin Shueidun suddenly put away his fan and looked at Rei Minkai's eyes and asked, "How long will Rei-sensei stay here this time? Maybe half a month, or maybe a semester. After all, there are so many things, you have to deal with them one by one, right?" Rei Minkai smiled slightly but didn't give a direct response. However, these answers were enough for a smart person like Lin Shueidun. Is that so? Then, I have a presumptuous request. I don't know if Rei-sensei can make an exception? Lin Shueidun said word by word, and at the same time, paid attention to the changes in Rei Minkai's face. Please say. If I can help? Ray Minkai raised his eyebrows. I believe Ray-sensei also saw it. Right now, the student union is very short of manpower. I hope that student Euphemia Libritannia and teacher Ray Minkai can be our student union's image ambassador and etiquette teacher respectively. As for the length of time, it's all up to Ray-sensei or student Euphemia to decide. How about it? As soon as Lin Shueidun opened his mouth, it made Ray Minkai slightly surprised. He didn't expect this guy to be able to guess the relationship between Ray Minkai and Euphemia and ask for a big price. He wanted the dignified empress of the empire to be the image ambassador of a high school's student union. This courage was indeed different from ordinary people. Student Lin Shueidun. I don't know if you've heard of this saying, a man whose heart is not content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Oh? A proverb from the ancient Eastern countries? Of course, I've heard of it. But don't you think this is a good opportunity? For you, and for that student Euphemia, I don't think you came to this school to show off, right? I want to experience more of the ordinary student life. It's not a bad thing. Isn't that right? Lin Shueidun was calm in the face of Ray Minkai's sarcasm. At this point, Ray Minkai also slowly nodded. Just like what Lin Shueidun said, Euphemia didn't come to this school to show off. Therefore, as long as Euphemia heard Lin Shueidun's invitation, she would most likely nod and agree after some consideration. Then, let me look forward to what changes will happen to our student union with the help of student Euphemia. Everything depends on you, Teacher Lei. You really gave me a difficult problem. Where? For Teacher Lei, this is just a small problem. Whether it's for you or for that respected sir. Lin Shueidun. What a terrifying character hidden in an ordinary high school. If his stage could be changed from this high school to a bigger and broader stage, it would probably become another legendary story. After a short exchange and reaching an agreement to join the student union, Lin Shueidun was very satisfied and left with Mikihara, who was inseparable from him. At the same time, the communication signal from Avalon also made Ray Minkai's communication device ring. It's me. After Ray Minkai glanced at the closed door of the conference room, he connected to Avalon's communication device. Captain Knight, I'm Cecil. I'm now conveying an urgent message to you. Royd found something incredible in the Research Institute. Captain Knight, you need to go there in person. As soon as the communication device was opened, Cecil's voice came through. Something incredible? I see. Tell Royd that I'll be there in 8 hours. Tell him to keep it safe before then. Sure enough, in the Research Institute that was tightly hidden by the former Mr. AU, there were indeed some secrets that the outside world could not know. And these secrets would be revealed in front of Ray Minkai. Mr. O. What kind of good stuff are you hiding? After hanging up the communication, Ray Minkai's gaze fell on the edge of the playground below. There, Chidori was leading Euphemia on a tour of the school. The roar of the propeller shook the long space, and the helicopter carrying Reynolds slowly landed in a small city at the end of the world in the extreme south of South America. Long time no see. Dear Madam. As soon as Reynolds got off the helicopter, he welcomed the black-clothed woman who had been waiting by the side. Her every frown and smile was enough to charm all living beings. Let's cut the chatter. Reynolds, you've ruined my business. The woman who made Reynolds express his welcoming attitude was Miss Q, who cooperated with Mr. AU, but immediately hid her identity after Mr. AU's death and quickly disappeared from Amalgam's sight. No. Dear Madam, although I did contribute to this, it shouldn't be entirely my fault. If it weren't for Mr. AU's greed and wanting to annex my power and property, I'm afraid it wouldn't have ended up like this today. Reynolds didn't deny his intention to encourage Mr. AU to die, but he didn't promise that it was all his fault. Let's not talk about these things. Now, what I'm most concerned about is whether you can take over Mr. AU's power and complete my commission. Miss Q snorted coldly and didn't care about Reynolds' explanation. In the face of Miss Q's approach, Reynolds showed a relaxed smile. Of course, dear madam, you and I have the same purpose, although our understanding of that item may be somewhat different. In terms of the ultimate goal, we are of the same mind. Now, let me complete the commission that Mr. AU couldn't complete for you. Madam, you're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.